Is every human life truly valuable? And if not, who gets to decide which lives are worth saving and which can be discarded? Monster dives deep into these haunting questions, unraveling a story still regarded by many as one of the greatest psychological thrillers not just in anime, but in all of fiction. The series debuted on television from April 7, 2004 to September 28, 2005, airing a total of 74 episodes, which isn't really that long by anime standards. This is an adaptation of the manga series by Naoki Urasawa, which bears the same name. Our main characters are Dr. Kenzo Tenma and Johan Liebert. Our protagonist, the Doctor, embodies compassion and empathy as he tries his best to follow his Hippocratic oath. Our antagonist, Johan, is the complete opposite, a concentration of all that is evil merged into one person. Spooky, right? Not unlike Batman and the Joker, our main characters can't seem to escape their equally symbiotic and toxic relationship. But for how long will the moral color of our protagonist remain unblemished? Or simply put, does anyone actually win in the end? Well, let's kick off and find out. Let's get to know all about Monster, a psychedelic trip into a post-Hitler German society. But before that, real quick, if I mess up any name pronunciations, I'm really sorry. A lot of these were really hard and German is not my strong suit. But I love the series, I think it's worth talking about. Alright, let's jump in. Episode 1 opens with a passage describing a multi-headed beast from the Book of Revelations. This is our first glance at the monster, even before we get to meet him. We then head to Eisler Memorial Hospital where Dr. Kenzo Tenma steps out of the operating room, fresh from saving a famous opera singer's life. His colleagues shower him with praise. He's a genius, a prodigy, a surgical god. Tenma responds with humility, but the moment the coast is clear, reality smacks him in the face. A crying Turkish woman clutches her child, devastated. Her husband has just died, and the kid, innocent and hopeful, asks her where his father is. Tenma can't look away fast enough, as guilt starts to creep in. It's 1986 in Germany, and Tenma wakes up to the sight of his fiancée, Eva Heinemann, who's as ambitious as she is beautiful. On the TV, Eva's father, Dr. Udo Heinemann, who's also the hospital director by the way, is basking in the media's praise for the opera singer's successful surgery. Yeah, the surgery that Tenma just performed. Dr. Udo is your typical medical ghoul, who sucks in all the impressive achievements of his junior staff and claims them for himself. What a leech. Tenma whines about it, because why isn't he getting the media blitz? But Eva assures him that it's all part of the plan. Stick with their father, she promises, and he will rise straight to the top.
Which means I'll be the director's wife. You better make me happy, Kenzo, because hardship doesn't suit me.
Later, Tenma is in surgery again, this time with his friend Dr. Becker, who casually drops a truth bomb. Hospitals aren't about saving lives. They're about money and politics, and that Tenma is being used by the hospital director. It's a gut punch. But before Tenma can fully process it, the grieving Turkish woman that we saw earlier finds him. She's furious. She demands that he give back her husband, the man who died because Tenma had been ordered to prioritize the opera singer instead. Tenma stands frozen. He's a genius doctor, not an actual god capable of resurrecting the dead, but in that moment, knowing he could have saved the Turkish woman's husband. If it were not for the more famous opera singer, he feels like a murderer. At dinner with Eva, Tenma tells her everything. His doubts, his regrets, and the unbearable weight of playing favorites with human lives. Eva is more interested in fashion and small talk, so she barely reacts. However, she does casually tell him that it's not his fault that the Turkish man died. After all lives aren't equal. Hearing this, Tenma is visibly shaken.
After all, people's lives aren't created equal.
Meanwhile, across town, chaos unfolds at the Liebert household. By the time the police break in, the scene is pure horror. Michael, an East German diplomat, and his wife lie dead, executed. Their twin children are the only survivors. The boy has been shot in the head and is barely clinging to life. And the girl, she's just standing there dazed, whispering a single word, kill. Tenma is called to save the boy. He prepares to operate until the hospital higher-ups throw a wrench in the works. The mayor of the city has just been rushed in with a life-threatening condition. Now comes the tricky part. The mayor's survival means big funding for the hospital. Remember what Dr. Becker said about money and politics. As these two lives hang by a thread, it's deja vu all over again for Dr. Tenma. Dr. Udo calls and orders Tenma to do the mayor's surgery. That Dr. Becker will take over the child's operation. Tenma objects to the sudden change. He's the best surgeon for the situation. For a moment, he just stands there, heart pounding, mind racing. He sees Eva's cold smile, the Turkish woman's grief. the unfairness of it all, and then he makes his choice. He turns away from the mayor's operating room and steps toward the child. The boy will live, and Tenma has just made the worst decision in his life. He just doesn't know it yet. In episode 2, we discover that Tenma has successfully removed a bullet from the young boy's head, and for a brief moment, life is good, but his happiness lasts about 5 minutes. As soon as he steps out of the operating room, doctors Boyer and Eisen visit him. They're not here to congratulate him. Instead, they inform him that the mayor is dead. Congrats on ruining everything. The next day, Detective Egon Weisbach arrives at the hospital. Apparently, he's here to investigate the Liebert murders. He's looking for the Liebert's daughter, Anna, but finds her missing. Turns out she's been casually sneaking out of her hospital room, wandering the halls, and she's still muttering kill. Fast forward to a fancy hospital gala where Boyer and Eisen get a standing ovation for trying and failing to save the mayor. Tenma finally decides to face Dr. Udo, who pretends to forgive him for his disobedience. Then, with a smile, Udo drops the hammer. Not only was Tenma demoted, but he's never going to get a promotion, never get published, never get a recommendation. His career is dead. He might as well be a glorified janitor at this point. Tenma, shattered, stumbles outside where his fiancée Ava arrives in a limo. Tenma begs her to talk to her father and fix things. However, Ava, whose husband-to-be is now a medical peasant, responds to him in the most appropriate way possible. She rips off her engagement ring, chucks it at him, and immediately starts flirting with another doctor right in front of him.
Spare me, Kenzo. You're such a fool.
Just like that, Tenma's love life dies alongside his career. Our doctor is having a really bad day. Back at the hospital, Tenma sits beside Johan, the boy that he saved who is still in a coma. In a heartfelt drunken confession, Tenma vents about his shattered career, his backstabbing colleagues, and his horrible ex-fiancée. He bitterly mutters that the hospital higher-ups would be better off dead. Then, in classic dramatic irony, Johan wakes up just as Tenma walks away. Meanwhile, Detective Egon is trying and failing to get Anna to talk. His superiors at the BKA, which is basically the German FBI, are breathing down his neck, so he suggests reuniting her with her brother to snap her out of the shock. The doctors, however, quickly shut that down, calling it way too risky. Over in Johan's room, the hospital bigwigs, including Dr. Udo, Boyer, and another colleague called Oppenheim, are scheming about how to profit off the twins' tragic story. You see, Udo is not only a medical ghoul, he also believes that a terrible crisis shouldn't go to waste. Tenma, being the only decent human being around, refuses to let them exploit the kids. Udo's solution? Strip Tenma of his role as Johan's physician. Then, in the ultimate power move, he eats Johan's candy and shares the rest with his co-conspirators. Later, Tenma hears a scream and rushes over to find Anna passed out in a doctor's arms. Apparently, despite every warning, some genius decided to bring her to see Johan. Of course, Boyer was behind it, camera in hand, ready to capture the tear-jerking sibling reunion for publicity. Johan, now fully awake, is crying and reaching for his sister. Tenma, meanwhile, is getting thrown out of the room like he's some piece of garbage. In a very different kind of nightmare, Ava arrives home, calling out for her father, but there is complete silence. Elsewhere, a nurse makes a horrifying discovery: the lifeless bodies of Boyer and Oppenheim. Back at the mansion, Ava finds her father sitting dead at his desk. So, just to recap, everybody that Tenma drunkenly wished death upon is just mysteriously dropped dead. What are the odds? Episode 3 begins with Tenma waking up to the sound of loud knocking at his door. It's the police, and they're not here for a wellness check. They inform him rather bluntly that Dr. Udo, Dr. Oppenheim, and Dr. Boyer are dead, all killed by poisoned candy. Meanwhile, Eisler Memorial Hospital is in absolute chaos. Reporters are swarming outside trying to get details on the murders. Inside, things aren't much better either. Patients are waiting for surgeries. The police are demanding reports, and to top it all off, the twins have vanished. So yeah, not a normal day.
But they're both just gone!
What's going on? What the hell is going on?
At Udo's funeral, Tenma and his friend Dr. Becker are stopped by inspectors Egon and Heinrich Lunge, two detectives who clearly have their eyes on Tenma. Because, let's be real, when all your professional rivals suddenly drop dead, people tend to get suspicious. Then, in a bizarre twist of fate, Tenma, once blacklisted and shunned, is promoted to chief surgeon of Eisler Memorial Hospital. It's almost poetic. The very job he was told he'd never get. Strange how life works out when all the people blocking your success mysteriously disappear. Ava, ever the opportunist, decides that this is the perfect time to reach out. She invites Tenma to a cafe, all sweet smiles and regret, telling him that she wants to make things right. Tenma, who's finally developed a healthy sense of self-respect and total Sigma aura, takes one look at her, and walks out. Fast forward 9 years to 1995. A string of middle-aged couples are turning up dead across Western Germany, and the police are scrambling to find the culprit. We're then introduced to Adolf Junkers, a horrified man caught running through the city of Dusseldorf, screaming about a monster. Whatever he's running from, it's bad. But all of this is cut short when Junkers gets hit by a car. Junkers is then rushed to Eisler Memorial Hospital, and who's about to operate on him? None other than our Dr. Tenma. But before he can get to work, Inspector Lunge walks in. It's been nearly a decade, and he's still investigating those doctor murders from 9 years ago. Tenma acknowledges him and proceeds to surgery. There's a life to save, and the detective will have to wait.
Please do be sure to perform a successful operation for the sake of the BKA.
Oh, and the inspector is kind of doing these weird typing motions with his left hand while he talks. Not the best tick, but we don't judge. Episode 4 begins as Inspector Lunge, still on his never-ending quest for answers, sits down with Adolf Junkers at Eisler Memorial Hospital. The goal? Get Junkers to spill the beans on who's behind the series of these middle-aged couple murders. But the moment Lunge asks who gave the orders, Junkers basically short-circuits, having a full-blown panic attack. Dr. Tenma tries a different approach. He tells Junkers about the time that he saved a young boy named Johan, explaining that as a doctor, saving lives is his duty. Junkers, touched by the sentiment and also probably realizing that Tenma is the only person in his life who isn't trying to kill him, thanks him. Then, in a random but strangely heartfelt moment, Junkers reminisces about how, as a kid, he really wanted a mechanical clock. He even tried stealing one once, but his grand heist ended with him getting caught before he could claim it. Later, Dr. Becker decides that it's time for Tenma to get back out there, and sets him up on a date with the daughter of a state legislator. On the way to his date, Tenma spots a mechanical clock in a store, and remembering Junkers' childhood story, tries to buy it for him as a gift. Because if anybody deserves a small win, it's the traumatized hitman recovering in his hospital. Unfortunately though, when Tenma gets back to the hospital, things take a very dark turn. Junkers has decided he's ready to confess everything. But before he can, the policemen assigned to guard him turn up dead. And worse, Junkers himself has gone missing. Tenma, now fully in detective mode, tracks Junkers to a construction site, and that's where he finds him down on his hands and knees alongside Johan. Junkers, terrified out of his mind, finally spills the truth. Johan is the mastermind behind the series of the middle-aged couple murders. He's the one who gave the orders. And judging by the look on his face, Junkers knows exactly how this night is going to end. So he begs Tenma to run away. Tenma, still clinging to the hope that the boy whose life he once saved isn't a cold-blooded serial killer, tries to talk Johan down. He tells Johan that the weight of every life is equal. Nobody has the right to decide who should die. That this is the same principle he's held on to since that fateful day that he pulled a bullet out of Johan's skull. Johan then tells Tenma that he now goes by a very different name, but still deeply appreciates Tenma for saving his life and even considers him like a father. Damn. He congratulates Tenma on his elevated status at the hospital following the deaths from 9 years ago. And then Tenma is shocked to learn that Johan was responsible for the triple murders of Dr. Udo, Boyer, and Oppenheim. Like Faust and Mephistopheles from German folklore, Tenma had apparently and unknowingly made a pact with the devil when he wished death on his enemies. Johan then goes on to shoot Junkers, point blank in execution style. After that, he reveals his face to Tenma, showing a calm and unreadable expression. This is what a monster looks like after all, far from the multi-headed beast described earlier in the Book of Revelations. Shaken but determined, Tenma later tells Inspector Lunge everything he heard and witnessed. Lunge listens carefully, his fingers doing that eerie typing in the air thing that he does. But the question remains, will he actually believe Tenma? Or is Tenma about to become suspect number 1? In episode 5, we meet a young woman called Nina Fortner. Nina is living a peaceful life in the city of Hidelberg with her foster parents, until strange anonymous emails start showing up in her inbox. The language of the emails suggests that the sender knows her quite well and has an affection for her. Meanwhile, in a therapy session with Dr. Gettel, Nina assures him that her old nightmares have stopped. But she's yet to confront her past trauma, and the therapist doesn't think she's completely out of the woods yet. Later, Nina suspects her friend Peter might be behind the strange emails, but he denies everything. Then, in the middle of a university lecture, a discussion about a brutal family murder sends her spiraling. A wave of panic crashes over her as she realizes something terrifying. She has no memories from before she was 10 years old. Back to our MC, Tenma continues his relentless investigation into Johan-related murders, hoping to find a lead on Johan. His search then leads him to a blind elderly man's apartment, and the old man immediately recognizes him. More than that, he also knew Johan. Jackpot. He reveals that Johan once stayed with him using the name Franz. The old man then recounts how Johan was fascinated by his war stories, but but explains that what truly captivated the young lad was one thing: fear. The fear of unfortunate victims.
That was all he was interested in. He toyed with fear.
Tenma also learns that Johan plans on getting his sister back when she turns 20. Anna Liebert will be turning 20 in a few days. Back in Heidelberg, Nina's friends set her up on a blind date with her supposed Prince Charming, a boy from her class who might be the one sending those cryptic emails. But just as she meets him, she spots somebody else in the distance, a familiar figure, Johan. The sight of him is too much to bear, and she falls unconscious. In this episode, our MC isn't about to let Johan get the upper hand. Determined to stop whatever sinister plan is unfolding, Tenma heads to the Hidelberg Post, a newspaper company, and enlists the help of its director, Jacob Maurer, to dig up an old article that might hold the key to saving Anna Liebert from being kidnapped by her own brother. If this wasn't clear, Anna and Nina are one and the same. Meanwhile, Nina gets an unsettling update. Her classmate / honorary Prince Charming back at the scene where she fainted never sent her those mysterious emails. She then confesses to her therapist, Dr. Gettel, that seeing Johan felt eerily similar to her nightmares, which doesn't exactly help her growing sense of dread. You see, Nina had suffered amnesia after her parents' murder, so she still doesn't know about her relationship with Johan. Back at the newspaper, the director Maurer discovers that Tenma pulled an all-nighter scouring the archives. Impressed, and maybe a little concerned, he invites Tenma to lunch, and casually drops the fun fact that his wife left him because he smoked too much. Because nothing bonds two men like tragic love stories over a meal. Amidst all of this, Nina's foster parents are busy planning her 20th birthday party. They'd initially planned to tell her that she was adopted, but like loving foster parents, they changed their mind at the last minute. But then Nina gets another anonymous email, this time instructing her to meet at Heidelberg Castle at 7 p.m. This is definitely not part of the birthday itinerary as far as I can tell. Back with Tenma and Maurer, they finally track down the Fortner's address, hoping to prevent whatever Johan is planning.
But you smoke too much. As a doctor, I recommend you cut back.
I told you already, it's none of your business.
Also realizing that Nina could be in serious danger, they rush over to warn her, only to find that she's already gone. Tenma speeds off to the Heidelberg Castle, while Maurer stays behind to explain the situation to her panic-stricken parents. When he tries to call the police, he discovers that the phone line has been cut. At the castle, Nina thinks that she's been set up, that it's all a cruel prank, but as she turns to leave, a stranger blocks her path. He calmly informs her that he was instructed to make sure she doesn't leave, and then, the guy quickly goes from calm to batshit crazy in literally a second. Before things can take an even darker turn, Tenma bursts onto the scene, stopping the man just as he's about to attack Nina. But Nina herself isn't such a damsel in distress as she knocks down the assailant and uses Tenma's tie as handcuffs. Now subdued, the mystery thug lets something slip. Johan was the one who ordered him to keep Nina there until he got back from something that he had taken care of. That doesn't sound good. With no time to waste, Tenma and Nina take off, racing back to the Fortner's house. Because if Johan's plan is still in motion, then things are far from over. In episode 7, Tenma and Nina arrive at the Fortner's house only to walk straight into a nightmare. Nina's foster parents and Jacob Maurer are now soaked in their own blood. Tenma breaks down and hugs Maurer's corpse, setting him off with an unlit cigarette.
Mr. Maurer, you don't have to quit smoking anymore, all right?
Nina, meanwhile, regains all of her memory, having now lost her parents a second time in similar tragic circumstances. Soon enough, 2 police officers, Detective Mesner and Detective Muller, show up. They inspect the crime scene, and then they casually inform Tenma and Nina to accompany them to the station. Something about these guys feels off. As they drive through the night, Tenma watches them closely. Then he spots it, a smear of blood on Mesner's clothes. He concludes that these guys are fake cops. As they approach a checkpoint, Tenma decides to act fast. He tells the officers that Nina needs some fresh air. The moment they step outside, he grabs her hand and the two make a break for it, diving straight into the river to escape. Soaking wet and freezing, they take refuge in a cabin deep in the forest. There, Nina finally opens up about the horrifying encounter she had with Johan as a kid, and how he begged her to kill him. Then, with raw emotion, she turns on Tenma with anger and frustration. If he hadn't saved Johan all those years ago, her foster parents would still be alive. And well, Tenma knows that she's right.
After you shoot me, make sure that you throw the gun out the window. And he told me to aim for his head.
The next morning, Tenma returns to the city to report what happened to the police. Outside the precinct, he runs into a swarm of reporters talking about a new twist. The crazy thug who tried to attack Nina at Heidelberg Castle is now dead. The media suspect his murder is connected to the killings at the Fortner home. Then comes another shock. Mesner and Muller, those suspicious officers from the crime scene, were actual cops. And now, the Heidelberg police are after a new suspect in these latest murders. It's Tenma. Meanwhile, Inspector Lunge arrives at the castle to investigate. Among the evidence, he finds something that seals the deal: Tenma's tie. When Tenma returns to the cabin, expecting to talk things through with Nina, he finds it completely empty. She's gone. On the bright side, she left a parting note saying she doesn't blame him anymore for releasing Johan back into the world. The doctor has been through more than enough already. In episode 8, Inspector Lunge drops by Ava's place for a little chat. He wants to know why Tenma's tie was found at a murder scene in Hidelberg Castle. Ava, as usual, is a mix of bitterness, drama, and lingering ex-girlfriend energy. These days, she drinks herself to sleep, trying to forget how dumb she was to have dumped our Sigma protagonist. Speaking of which, she decides to pay Tenma a visit at Eisler Memorial Hospital, trying to patch things up. But Tenma doesn't feel like playing the romance game with her anymore, so he shuts her down immediately. This is when she switches tactics. It's either he comes back to her or she'll snitch to the cops about all the crimes that he didn't commit. Tenma just pretends like he didn't hear all of this, but this is the last straw. Hell hath no fury, like crazy Ava rejected, and she immediately goes to Inspector Lunge, spilling everything that she knows. Lunge wastes no time. He orders Tenma to be brought in for the Heidelberg Castle murder. But Tenma, apparently his survival instincts sharper than a scalpel, had seen the writing on the wall. He can't trust the police after the Fortner murders, so he resigns from the hospital and just as the police arrive, pulls off the most dramatic exit possible, taking cover in an ambulance and speeding into the sunset.
Hey, get out of the way! You people are interfering with the police!
Like hell, Dr. Tenma would never be capable of killing anyone!
5 months later, our formerly mild-mannered surgeon is now a fugitive hitchhiking his way to Frankfurt, where he's the main suspect in the murder of the Springers, another middle-aged couple, and this time, he's packing some serious heat. Talk about character development. Episode 9 covers the 5-month time skip of training before our peace-loving doctor became a gun-wielding Chad. By episode 10, Tenma has arrived in Frankfurt. He's a wanted man now, the media's favorite serial killer, but he's not one to be distracted. He brought Johan back from the brink of death, so he feels that it's his job to take him out once and for all. While digging into the Springer family murders, a family that once lived with Johan, Tenma, drops by their house, only to find a burglarer already there. Meet Otto Heckel, a small-time crook in the middle of looting the place. Before Tenma can decide whether to be angry or just confused, the police show up, and suddenly both of them are fugitives. Not exactly the partnership that Tenma had in mind. Otto, a professional opportunist, offers Tenma a deal. If Tenma agrees to work as an underground surgeon for criminals, Otto will lead him to the guy who actually killed the Springers. Tenma is not thrilled about this, but the opportunity is too good to pass up. They soon track down the killer's apartment, where Tenma comes face to face with a gun-wielding man who is quite the story to tell. Turns out Johan was the adopted son of the Springers for about a year, and the gun-wielding man was buddies with Johan right at that time. Back then, Johan was going by the name Eric. Everything was fine, and they were all having a jolly good time, until the Springers decided to tear up a sunflower bed to make room for a parking spot. Seems harmless, right? Well, not exactly. You see, this guy had fond memories of walking through sunflower fields with his mother. So when the Springers destroyed a sunflower field, he vented about it to his friend Johan. Well, Eric, to be exact. Johan took things way further, telling him that the Springers weren't his family anymore and that he should just go ahead and kill them. Sadly, this is exactly what he did. You see, Johan is a master manipulator, and having his adopted parents killed or getting others to do his dirty work isn't the most surprising twist. Just as Tenma is about to leave, the man drops one final bombshell. Johan left him a message back at the Springer house. Then he shoots himself.
Your fate has already been decided for you. So has mine.
Tenma and Otto rush back to the Springer residence, where they find Johan's cryptic message scrawled across a wall. Now, you may be noticing a strange pattern. A lot of these middle-aged childless couples who've been murdered either adopted both Johan and Nina, or just one of the two. This is an important detail, because not only did Johan suggest to Tenma that he now goes by a different name, he also hinted that he wants to erase everybody with knowledge of his past. With the exception of Tenma, this includes middle-aged foster parents and people who may have done some of his dirty work. Back to the episode, Otto has another scheme up his sleeve. He tricks Tenma into taking a sketchy medical bag, patching up a wanted terrorist, Karl Brandt, who had accidentally killed a kid during an operation. Tenma takes one look at the situation and thoroughly nopes out of it. The threat of getting shot by Karl's henchmen isn't persuasive either. This part of the episode mainly highlights our main character's awesome moral code. We then learn that Karl basically pulled a Luigi on a greedy top company executive. Why should Tenma save the life of a man whose actions, however justified, led to the death of an innocent girl? After Karl gives his parting words about not wanting to die, Tenma berates him and reluctantly does some emergency procedures before insisting that they get him to a real hospital. However, greedy little Otto sees a news report about a reward for the terrorists and immediately snitches to the police. Tenma and Karl manage to find a hiding spot. When Karl asks why Tenma even bothered to save a terrorist like him, Tenma gives a pretty simple answer.
Because I believe in you. I have faith in your humanity.
Not surprising, our protagonist doesn't like to play God. Carl is eventually arrested though, as he should be. In episode 11, Tenma's search for answers takes him to Berlin, where he visits the former Liebert residence, hoping to learn more about Johan's past. There, he meets a former East German officer who tells him something unexpected. The Lieberts adopted twins from a place called Kinderheim 511. Following this new lead, Tenma finds the now abandoned Kinderheim 511. The place is in ruins, a shell of whatever it once was. But his search does not end there. It leads him to Mr. Hartmann, a former East German Ministry of Health official who seems to know more than he's willing to share. On his way to Hartmann's apartment, Tenma comes across a young boy, injured and alone. He treats the boy, then lets him go, not thinking too much of it. But we haven't seen the last of him just yet. At Hartmann's place, the conversation takes a strange turn. Kinderheim 511 was more of a prison than an orphanage. Hartmann confirms that Johann and his sister were separated. Anna was sent to another orphanage. But Johann was different. Hartmann knew him very well. He even claims that Johann led some sort of uprising at Kinderheim 511. But when Tenma tries to push for details about the facility's past, the door opens and in walks the same boy Tenma had helped earlier. His name is Dieter, and he lives with Hartmann. Something about the situation unsettles Tenma, so he leaves and promises to come back after some time. Seconds after, we see this absolutely terrifying look that Hartmann shoots in Dieter's direction. On his way back, Tenma spots a football in a shop window and buys it for Dieter as a small gesture. After getting a mechanical clock for a traumatized criminal like Adolf Junkers, getting a football for a kid just to see him smile doesn't come as a surprise. But when he returns, he finds out the truth. Dieter has been badly beaten, and it's clear who's responsible.
You are a doctor, aren't you? The one wanted for murder.
Without thinking, Tenma draws his gun, aiming it right at Hartmann. For a moment, it feels like he might actually pull the trigger, but instead, he turns away, taking Dieter with him and rushing him to the hospital. He also warns the nurse not to let anybody else take the boy away. After that, determined to find a safe place for the boy, Tenma seeks out an orphanage. It happens to be the same one where Nina, or Anna, was placed as a child. There, he meets Erna Tietze, who shares a crucial piece of the puzzle. Johann and his sister were found wandering alone near the Czechoslovakian border, and then she tells him something even more chilling. Kinderheim 511, where Johann was raised, wasn't just an orphanage, it was an experiment. As if being a prison-esque facility isn't bad enough, now we're wandering into Joseph Mengele and concentration camp territory. The 12th episode continues with Erna explaining what went on in 511. Apparently, the orphanage was run by the East German Ministry of Welfare and the Ministry of Interior with the sole aim of turning the children into perfect soldiers. It was a pet project that twisted the minds of children, forcing them into different warring factions and erasing any sense of compassion that they had. But when communism collapsed, all the East German officials tied to the project completely scattered. Well, almost all of them. One guy stuck around, Hartmann. Hartmann was a former Ministry of Welfare official who was personally in charge of operating 511. Erna then reveals that something terrible happened in 511, leading to the deaths of every last orphan and their instructors, all except for Johann. Meanwhile, over at the hospital, Hartmann pulls a fast one and picks up Dieter before Tenma even gets there. By the time our favorite fugitive doctor arrives, Dieter is long gone. Tenma rushes to Hartmann's apartment hoping to find them, but he finds the place empty. What he does find, though, is a stack of old photos from Kinderheim 511, and among them, a picture of little Johann standing next to a much older man. Yep, we'll meet him soon enough.
Yes, that's it. Every single one of these photographs was taken at 511 Kinderheim.
Figuring we'll get more answers back at 511, Tenma heads there and finds Dieter badly beaten and just sitting on a throne by a bonfire. Then Hartmann shows up and casually drops one of the most terrifying facts yet. Everybody in 511, instructors and children alike, massacred each other. And Johann, he was there to witness all of it, while sitting on a throne at the top of the stairs. Hartmann reveals that there was a fierce power struggle which consumed all 50 instructors and orphans in 511. Then comes the real kicker. Johann was the one who started the fire, metaphorically. And how did he do it? He just added a little fuel to the already existing fire. This was a 10-year-old, by the way. His ability to manipulate people with words started quite early in his childhood. And there's more. We also see that Hartmann has become so infatuated with Johann over the years that he's made it his hobby to abuse children into becoming little Johann clones. Dieter is just another one of Hartmann's little Kinderheim projects. But as Hartmann admits, it wasn't Kinderheim 511 that made Johann into the veritable monster that he is. Johann was beyond a perfect soldier. He was a natural-born leader of men, and there was no way 511 could have created such a masterpiece. Hartman claims that Johan's ultimate goal in life was to be the last person alive at the end of the world. Normal 10-year-olds dream about being astronauts, but not him. He was fantasizing about wiping out everyone else. Dieter, on the other hand, doesn't have that same bleak, world-ending mindset, which in Hartman's eyes makes him a total disappointment. If you're not aspiring to be the architect of humanity's doom, you're just not living up to potential. Tenma tells Dieter to make a choice. Come with him or stay with Hartman. But Hartman just laughs in his face, believing Dieter will never leave his side. Then, just to keep things extra dramatic, he drops one last nugget of information. He says Tenma probably doesn't have what it takes to kill Johan, but if he really wants answers, he should find General Wolf, the same man beside Johan in the photo. Wolf, as it turns out, was the one who first discovered Johan. And surprise, surprise, Dieter chooses the guy who gave him a football over the guy who wrecked his elbow.
Dieter! Do you really think you can live without me?
Tenma grabs him, and thus begins a new dynamic duo of doctor and orphan boy. This episode is kind of a side quest, set in a village with a few new characters who won't matter in the long run. But to summarize, Tenma gets recognized by a police officer. Tenma does doctor duty despite the threat of getting arrested. Tenma doesn't get arrested because the patient he treated is the police officer's mother. The village doctor begs Tenma to stick around and help out. Tenma refuses because he has to kill Johan. The doctor urges Dieter to keep Tenma on the right path and to stop all of this murder talk. In episode 14, we find out that Inspector Lunge has a ton of cases to deal with, but for some reason, he is deciding to focus on a murdered. He thinks a particular politician on the woman's client list is responsible, so he presses the secretary of said politician to confess what he knows. While at it, Ava barges into his office demanding to know when Tenma will finally be arrested. Lunge tells her the case is already solved. He's convinced Johan doesn't exist, and is just one of Tenma's split personalities. Now all that's left is to wait for the police to pick him up. It's easy peasy. But what's not been easy is Lunge's personal life. Lunge goes home one night to find his wife and stepdaughter leaving. The inspector isn't the most family-oriented man. Oh, there's a fun little extra twist. His stepdaughter casually announces that she's pregnant. But before Lunge can react, his phone rings. Duty calls. Unfortunately, the secretary that Lunge's been pressuring to snitch on his boss ends up committing suicide and leaving a note professing his boss's innocence. As a result, Lunge's superior takes him off the case entirely, leaving him with just one thing to focus on: the middle-aged couple murders, as well as the occasional visits from his ex-girlfriend Ava. Over at Ava's, she's busy trying to distract herself from her feelings for Tenma by flirting with different men and her gardener.
Oh, I don't want to give you back to your wife. Come on, stay.
All right.
She randomly asks her gardener if he has what it takes to make her happy. Spoiler alert, he does not. She takes him out to a fancy dinner and then immediately ruins it by muttering our main character's name in her sleep after they hook up. The gardener, sensing that she's still obsessed with Tenma, tries to make a move anyway, offering to be the guy who makes her happy. Ava, in return, just brushes him off with laughter. Before leaving, the gardener mentions he's having Christmas dinner with his daughter. If Ava wants to come, she's welcome. Fast forward to Christmas Eve. The gardener and his daughter are setting up dinner, and the gardener seems very sure that someone else is coming. But instead of Ava, his estranged ex-wife shows up. Outside, Ava does arrive, just in time to see the happy family reunion through the window. This is exactly the life she always wanted, but can't have. And let's just say that she handles the situation in the worst way possible. She goes back home and burns the entire garden down. Inspector Lunge and Ava now have nothing of purpose in their lives except their mutual desire to bring down Tenma. The next episode opens with Nina, disguised as a stalker, entering a bar in search of a man called the Baby. Then we switch to Frankfurt main station, where Dr. Tenma is on a desperate hunt for answers about the Fortner's murder. He finds Detective Messner, or rather, the wreck of the man that he used to be. No longer a detective, Messner is now a drug-addicted shadow of himself, but he still has a mouth, and he knows a lot. He confesses to Tenma that he was just a lookout that fateful night when Nina's foster parents died. The real killer was Detective Muller. Someone had tried to silence Messner for good, but he was unexpectedly saved by a mysterious syndicate led by a man known as the Baby. Okay. We then also find out that the Baby is a fanatic who wants to usher in a new in the person of Johan. In order to achieve this, he plans to use Nina as bait to lure him out. Before stumbling off, Messner tells Tenma that the Baby can be found at a bar called Candy, and that Nina had also gone to find him. Nina goes straight to the Baby, who is disturbingly well informed about her life, even her original name, Anna Liebert. Unfazed, Nina demands to know where Johan is as she plans to kill him.
What are you going to do when you finally have your little family reunion?
Tenma, realizing the danger, rushes to the candy bar to save Nina. But before that, A Turkish warns him that an Asian man like him walking to the candy is practically asking for a beating. Not a surprise, as this particular bar is run and patronized by a bunch of bigoted neo-Nazis. She also mentions that her friend, Ayşe, another Turkish, kidnapped by people from Candy. Before Tenma can process this all, a red Mercedes-Benz belonging to the baby slams into him. While Tenma is left to fend for himself, Nina is taken to a mansion, where she meets Professor Gedalitz, a high-ranking member of the same syndicate as the baby. The syndicate is made up of 4 leaders: Professor Gedalitz, General Wolf, and 2 more members who are yet to be introduced. The goal of their organization is to make Johan their supreme leader, and to help him achieve his destiny of making Germany great again, or so they think. Dominated a whole country using raw charisma, they believe Johan, even more gifted with charisma of messianic proportions, will do a lot more at a much younger age. Gedalitz tells Nina that Johan will come looking for her, and when he does, something big is going to happen. Back at the candy, Tenma is beaten senseless by the baby, who gleefully spills his grand plan. A massive fire is about to consume the entire Turkish district, a welcome party for Johan.
I told you to leave the questions to me, did I not?
What are you gonna do with her?
Why do you insist on killing me?
Back at the mansion, Nina starts communicating through the restroom plumbing with Ayşe, a Turkish woman held captive. She's overheard the planned attack on our community, and pleads with Nina to save her so she can alert those in her district. In this episode, Otto and Dieter find themselves in a heated argument. Otto is set on stealing a rug from a Turkish antique store, but Dieter strongly disagrees. Frustrated, they go their separate ways. While wandering, Dieter meets Ayşe's friend, who sees that he's terribly hungry and kindly invites him for dinner. As they talk, he learns some troubling news. Ayşe has been kidnapped by people from Candy, and an Asian man was hit by a car. Dieter fears it might be Tenma. Meanwhile, Tenma learns that General Wolf is planning to meet with the baby and the other members of the organization. At the same time, the baby receives word that everything is in place to set the Turkish district on fire. But Tenma tries to burst baby's bubble, letting him understand that Johan is no ideological ignorant bigot and won't be so easily impressed by this hate-fueled arson attack. He then also tells him that Johan hates everybody equally. And, well, this reality check comes with another beatdown. Still communicating through the restroom plumbing, Nina makes a promise to save Ayşe, her baby, and her community. Meanwhile, Dieter is determined to find Tenma. He sneaks into the candy, but before he gets far, he's caught and taken to the basement by the baby's men. Soon, General Wolf's men enter the basement and apologize to Tenma for how he's been treated, calling him a special guest of the general.
Stop! No!
Turns out, the baby is more of a lackey around here. At the mansion, Nina stumbles upon a grim scene. Ayşe, the Turkish woman she's been talking to through the plumbing, has been killed. Not only that, but Professor Gedalitz and several of his men have also been murdered. Something has gone terribly wrong, but she doesn't know what yet. While in transit to meet General Wolf, Tenma causes a little scene in order to let Dieter escape and alert the Turkish district about the fire. He finally meets the mysterious General Wolf, who reveals that his involvement with syndicate or organization, we don't really get a name for it, is purely out of convenience. He then shares a deeply personal truth. He was the one who gave Johan his name after finding the twins at the Czechoslovakian border. He then shows Tenma a new message Johan left behind at the scene of Professor Gedalitz's murder, and urges him to find and put an end to Johan's reign of terror. With little time to spare, Dieter returns to the city, determined to warn everybody about the planned attack on the Turkish district. However, before he can act, he and Otto are captured by a group of skinheads. Meanwhile, Nina climbs to the top of an abandoned warehouse, where Johan has left yet another cryptic message signaling that something even more dangerous is on its way. In the next episode, Tenma returns to Frankfurt with urgency, finding Ayşe's friend to deliver the heartbreaking news of her death. He doesn't give her much time to grieve, instead urging her to gather the Turkish town leaders and warn them about the baby's plan to set the district on fire. The baby, meanwhile, enjoys an extravagant dinner at a high-rise with 2 women, savoring the moment. However, his evening takes an unexpected turn when Nina arrives, gun in hand. She doesn't waste time with pleasantries. She demands to know where the fire will begin.
Get me some underwear first.
Huh?
A scary girl, isn't she?
Before she can get her answer, though, flames erupt across the Turkish district. As the situation escalates, Tenma jumps in to help the townspeople put out the fire. Elsewhere, Nina reaches an abandoned building where she finds Dieter and Otto. Otto has critical information. The fire at the abandoned building was only a distraction. The real disaster is set to unfold near a riverside factory. While Tenma treats the injured, Nina and Dieter rush toward the true target. Otto, on the other hand, sees an opportunity and sneaks back to the Turkish district to steal the expensive rug from the antique store. At the Riverside factory, Nina and Dieter arrive just in time to stop a man preparing to start another fire. Meanwhile, Tenma runs into Otto, who's now carrying the stolen rug. With no time to argue, Tenma convinces Otto to take him to Nina and Dieter's whereabouts. When they arrive, the fire's already started spreading. But Dieter comes up with an idea. He uses the stolen rug to smother the flames, preventing further destruction. As the police arrive, Tenma, Dieter, and Otto slip away in a boat. Before they leave, Nina tells Tenma that Johan has a split personality. Tenma then makes it to the top of the abandoned warehouse where Johan's message reads, "Help, the monster inside me is about to explode." In the next episode, after going through police interrogation following the fires in the Turkish district, Nina is picked up by an old familiar face. We go through a flashback showing her relationship with one Mr. Rosso, who was an assassin turned restaurant owner. She'd hoped to learn how to kill from Mr. Rosso, but seeing as he'd retired, decided to continue working for him as a waitress. They chat for a few minutes before parting ways. Nina's main focus now is finding her brother. In the following episode, Dr. Rudy Gillan, a criminal psychologist, sits across from Peter Jurgens, a convicted serial killer with a disturbing pattern. His victims are all teenage girls, and his crimes always have a component. But one case doesn't fit. Hannah Kemp, a 52-year-old woman. There was no assault, nothing like his other murders. When Rudy asks why he killed her, Jurgens simply says that a friend asked him to. Meanwhile, Tenma tracks down Rudy, an old-school acquaintance, and tells him everything. He explains Johan's messages, the murders of the doctors at Eisler Memorial Hospital, and the systematic elimination of all of Johan's foster parents. It seems Johan is erasing every trace of his past, and Tenma is determined to stop him. Rudy listens carefully but comes to his own conclusion. He starts to suspect that Tenma might have dissociative identity disorder, and could actually be Johan. It would explain a lot. Or so he thinks. Wanting to be cautious, Rudy contacts the police and arranges for them to pick up Tenma at Oder Park. Before this happens, though, Rudy re-interviews Jurgens and then visits Hannah Kemp's house to investigate further.
I followed all of the instructions that my friend left me in the letter perfectly.
Friend, who was he?
What he finds changes everything. He discovers letters filled with the same eerie messages that Tenma had shown him earlier. This proves that Johan is real, that he was the friend who told Jurgens to commit suicide. At Oder Park, Rudy meets Tenma in the middle of the crowd. He tells him that he now believes that he is innocent. Instead of turning him in, Rudy discreetly hands him a bus ticket, helping him escape just before the police can arrest him. Rudy's findings will be revisited in the near future. In this episode, Tenma and Dieter hitch a ride with Mr. Jones, a former police officer, and his wife. Their interaction with our main character works to highlight how Tenma can oftentimes get others to help him, despite knowing he's supposed to be a murderous fugitive. The next episode opens in Nice, France. Detective Muller, once a hitman, now an art dealer, seems to have a good life with his wife Barbara and their son Fritz. But something isn't sitting right with him. Lately, he's had this nagging feeling that somebody's watching him from the house next door. Barbara brushes it off, telling him that the place is empty, but Muller still feels uneasy. Later that evening, a private detective that Muller hired comes by with updates on Tenma, Nina, and Detective Messner. The news isn't very good. Messner was found stabbed to death. Hearing this, memories of the Fortners come rushing back. Guilt weighs heavy on Muller as he confesses to his bodyguard Roberto that he and Messner were blackmailed into killing the Fortners by some unknown figure. After the job, a hefty sum of money was wired to them, and they never questioned where it came from. Later, Muller makes another grim discovery. The detective he hired is now dead. And just when he starts to panic, Nina appears in his house. She wastes no time, telling him straight up that Roberto's bodyguard was the one who killed the detective. Before he can react, she snatches the detective's bag and forces him to drive her out of there. As they speed away, Muller is convinced that she's there for one reason: revenge. Muller admits that he killed the Fortners because somebody had dirt on him, and that dirt involved selling confiscated drugs back into the black market. Enraged, Nina orders him to stop the car. They stop by the sea, and for a moment, it looks like Nina is about to pull the trigger. But then Muller starts talking, not about his crimes, but about how when he met Barbara, everything changed.
You're crying? For your family? What about mine?
He talks about their son Fritz. And so, in the end, Nina spares his life. Instead, she checks the dead detective's report, which confirms her claim that Roberto was behind Messner's murder. Just as the tension settles, Muller's phone rings. It's Roberto. He's not asking for the dead detective's bag, he's demanding it, threatening to harm Barbara and Fritz if Muller doesn't comply. With no choice, Nina and Muller then head back. Muller hands over the bag, but before they can make a move, he realizes Nina's been taken away by Roberto's men. Without hesitation, Muller tracks her down to an abandoned house. Inside, it is made clear that Roberto works for Johan and is trying to erase everybody with a connection. However, we also learn that he doesn't wait to hear direct orders from Johan before taking action. And so, Nina is just moments away from being executed when gunfire erupts. Muller barges in and takes down every one of Roberto's men, fighting like a man possessed. But the fight doesn't end clean as Muller takes a bullet. Barely holding himself together, he slumps against the wall. Nina, without a second thought, grabs him and rushes him back into the house. But he sadly doesn't make it. Wow, just as I was kinda starting to like that guy. Episode 22 takes place in Hamburg, where another murder is shaking the city. The victim is a middle-aged couple called Mr. and Mrs. Jope. Inspector Lunge is on the case, but in his mind there's already a suspect. Our good old main character, Dr. Kenzo Tenma. Bear in mind that this has nothing to do with the cases of middle-aged couples getting killed across West Germany. Lunge knows this, but tries to link the Jope's murder with the other cases anyway. Why? Because the sensational media have made it seem like Tenma is the serial killer responsible for the murders. And so, why not roll with it instead of doing your actual job of finding the killer? To help sell the story, Lunge enlists Mr. Kipper, a journalist from the Hamburg Tag. He forces the journalist to print a false narrative about Tenma's involvement. Kipper, however, starts digging on his own and finds a different angle. He looks into Mrs. Jope's nephew, Mr. Ziebel, and realizes that this murder has nothing to do with the string of middle-aged couples being killed. Kipper believed in journalistic integrity, and he tells Lunge that his paper will need to print a retraction. But Lunge isn't about to let this happen. With a cold smirk, he reminds Kipper about something very personal, his extramarital affair. Kipper, now backed into a corner, reluctantly agrees to keep quiet and plays along. Later, Tenma arrives at the crime scene, unaware of the trap waiting for him. He carefully inspects the area, looking for any sign of Johan's involvement. But something feels off. The method, the details. It wasn't him.
Why does the murderer hesitate?
Just as the realization hits, Lunge steps into the house. The chase is on. But just as Lunge closes in, Ziebel appears, knife in hand, and stabs Lunge. Ziebel, in a panic, confesses to Mrs. Jope's murder. But instead of arresting him, Lunge simply raises his gun and shoots, muttering that he's not interested in Ziebel right now. Meanwhile, Tenma scrambles to his car, ready to disappear. But just as he's about to speed off, Lunge stumbles into view. He's severely wounded. And despite everything, Tenma can't just leave him to die. He sighs, throws open the passenger door, and rushes Lunge to the nearest hospital. Damn doctor. However, Lunge isn't about to let a little blood loss stop him. He regains consciousness and with sheer willpower, overpowers Tenma, slapping handcuffs onto him. The car veers into a warehouse, screeching to a halt inside. Trapped, Tenma demands the keys to the cuffs. But Lunge sees an opportunity. He presses Tenma to confess to the murder, but Tenma stays firm, staring him down. Lunge's vision blurs, and then he collapses. Without hesitation, Tenma unlocks the handcuffs, patches up the inspector, grips the wheel of the car, and speeds toward the hospital. But if you thought that this kind gesture would turn Lunge into an ally, think again. In episode 23, Ava wakes up in a jail cell. She'd been arrested for public drunkenness and is now homeless after not being able to pay rent. Her life is so bad right now that she has to sleep around just to get by. Disoriented and frustrated, she gets out of jail, gathers herself, and soon remembers something important. Her bag is missing. Determined to find it, she rushes back to her hotel room only to be met with another shock. Someone has broken in. Her belongings are in disarray, and worse yet, her money is gone. With nowhere to go and no cash to her name, Ava is left to wander the city, lost and exhausted. Then, as if materializing from the shadows, Roberto appears. The same man she was drinking with the night before her arrest, and in his hand, her missing purse. With a sly smile, Roberto invites her to lunch, acting like an old friend. Over their meal, Ava shows him a photo album, one of her most treasured possessions. Flipping through it, his eyes land on a picture of Ava and Tenma, but something is off. There are photos missing in the album.
Let's see. The ex-fiancé.
Please, don't tell me I told you about him.
When they return to the hotel, Roberto's tone shifts. He asks her about the missing photos, and within seconds smacks her in the face. Roberto says he knows where Tenma is, which causes Ava to start laughing hysterically. Ava says that the missing photos are the ones with Johan and Dr. Udo Heinemann, her father. She tells Roberto she saw a full-grown Johan in Dusseldorf 1 year ago. More than that, she reveals something only a handful of people know. The night Adolf Junkers was killed, she had secretly followed Tenma, and in the darkness, she saw him, Johan, climbing down the steps right after he pulled the trigger. By the time morning light creeps into the room, Roberto wakes up with a new resolve. Now that Ava knows the face of Johan, she has to die. In the next episode, Ava tells Roberto that arrangements have been made to deliver the pictures of Johan to the BKA if she were to be killed. But but if he takes her to Tenma's whereabouts, she'll hand over the pictures to him. He agrees and nobody has to be shot, for now at least. Deep in the forest near Fusen, Tenma has taken up work as a black market doctor, treating those who can't or won't go to a hospital. His current patient, Mr. Heitmeyer, a former lieutenant of a criminal syndicate, now living in quiet isolation. At lunch, Heitmeyer sits at the table with Tenma, Dieter, and Otto, enjoying a meal of chicken merengue. As they eat, Heitmeyer begins reflecting on his past. He admits that he lost everything because he only cared about money. Then he shares something even more intriguing. About 5 years ago, an underground bank controlled and laundered nearly all the money in the criminal underworld. The bank was worth billions. Then, one day, the head of the bank suddenly vanished. Even more surprising, rumor has it that he started when he was just 15 years old. The disappearance of this mystery mastermind left a power vacuum, which inevitably caused a deadly power struggle among those involved in the bank's operation. Tenma's mind suspects that this mysterious figure could be Johan. After all, he had caused similar chaos in Kinderheim as a 10-year-old. Heitmeyer, however, speculates that his former mastermind might now be a student somewhere, possibly in Munich. Dieter suggests inviting Heitmeyer's bodyguard, Helmut, to join them for lunch. At first, Heitmeyer refuses, saying that Helmut's job is to protect him, not sit at the table. But after some convincing from Tenma, he finally agrees and sends Dieter to fetch him. Unbeknownst to them, danger is already closing in, hidden among the trees. Roberto arrives with Eva at his side. Without hesitation, he shoots Helmut. Then he turns to Eva, shoving a gun into her hands, telling her to go find Tenma and kill him. Back at the house, Heitmeyer's pager beeps with an alert that Helmut has been shot. He knows what that means. His own life is in danger. Dieter, still searching for Helmut, runs into Eva instead. She urgently warns him that he needs to tell Tenma to get out now. Before Dieter can move, though, a gunshot rings out. Roberta has shot Eva. She collapses on the field. Dieter wants to help, but Eva, clutching her wound, orders him to run. Dieter stubbornly refuses to leave her behind, thinking that she's Tenma's friend. He helps her over to a tree, hiding with her as Roberto hunts them down. Tenma rushes down the hill and finds them just before Eva loses consciousness. Later, as things settle, Eva and Heitmeyer sit down for lunch, eating chicken merengue once again. Heitmeyer tells Eva that Roberto wanted to use her as bait to gain access into the hideout. He also confirms what she already suspects. Tenma saved her life, and now he's gone to Munich to find out just who this mystery mastermind banker really is. Episode 25 takes us to the new location, in Munich. Karl Neumann, a university student studying economics, balances his studies with a part-time job reading to the wealthy and demanding Hans-Georg Schuwald. Schuwald is highly regarded as an economic powerhouse, so much so that one phone call from him can send shockwaves in the German markets. However, the job of reading is far from easy. Schuwald constantly interrupts Karl, criticizing his reading and making him feel inadequate. One day, Karl confides in Lotte Frank, another student at the University of Munich who also works as Schuwald's residence. He tells her that he has had several foster parents, that his real reason for coming to Munich isn't just for school, he's searching for his mother, Margot Langer. Curious about Karl's past, Lotte helps him research Margot Langer. Their investigation then leads them to follow Schuwald one night, trailing him through the city and into Munich's red light district. They watch as he enters an apartment building, and Karl, unable to resist, decides to go inside and find out who Schuwald was visiting. Inside, they meet a woman named Blue Sophie, who claims to be Margot Langer. She tells Karl that Schuwald regularly gives her money because she's the mother of his child. Lotte puts the pieces together. Karl is Schuwald's son.
Money, money, money! It's all the bastard's been living for, and the only way he knows how to say sorry.
But Karl refuses to believe it, insisting that Margot, his own mother, was killed a year ago. Seeing his reaction, Blue Sophie admits that she was lying about being Margot Langer. She then accuses Karl of lying too, suggesting that he's only pretending to be Schuwald's son to inherit his fortune. But she reveals something else. There's another person claiming to be Schuwald's son, someone who works at Schuwald's residence on Thursdays. Lotte remembers seeing this mysterious Thursday boy once. He had blonde hair and a strikingly beautiful face. Determined to uncover the truth, Karl decides to find out who this other person is. Meanwhile, Lotte manages to learn the name of the Thursday boy, Edmund Foreign. She and Karl search the university for him, but Schuwald complicates things further. At his residence, he questions Karl about his parents, pressing him for answers. Karl hesitantly admits that he was adopted. Schuwald studies him carefully and then tells him that he believes he was finally found his real son, someone who isn't interested in his wealth. At this point, Schuwald believes his long-lost son is Edmund Foreign. Yep, the Thursday boy. But this sense of optimism is about to be shattered. Still determined to track down Edmund, Karl and Lotte go to his dorm room. Unfortunately, they find Edmund hanging from the ceiling. putting an end to Schuld's hope of reuniting with his long-lost son, for now. The next day, Letty introduces Carl to the student who works with Schuld on Fridays. His name is Johan Liebert. In the next episode, Richard Brown, a private investigator and former police officer, is hired by Schuld to investigate the suspicious suicide of Edmund Foreign. Richard, a man trying to leave his struggles with alcohol behind, consults a psychologist, Dr. Reichven. Something about Edmund's death just doesn't sit right with him. Meanwhile, Carl meets Johan on the rooftop of one of the university buildings. As they overlook the city, Johan asks Carl about his past, showing an unusual interest in his life. Carl, unaware of Johan's true nature, opens up, revealing that he spent his entire life moving between foster homes. Then, with an air of finality, he tells Johan the truth. He is Schuld's son. Johan starts crying for him upon hearing this information. The exact reason is not immediately clear, but at this point, we already understand that Johan's actions are usually very calculated.
It's very strange, but I feel like I can talk to you about almost anything in the world.
Letty, ever concerned for Carl and Schuld, shares her worries. Since Edmund's death, Schuld has grown withdrawn, barely eating, and appearing lost in thought. She suggests that Carl should tell Schuld the truth, that he is his real son, hoping it might lift his spirits. At the same time, Richard delivers his findings to Schuld. He tells him bluntly that he does not believe Edmund's death was a suicide. More importantly, against Schuld's initial assumption, Richard insists that Edmund could not have been his son. As Richard continues digging, his investigation leads him to Blue Sophie. She tells him something unsettling. Two different groups of men have come to her, both claiming to be Schuld's son. The first was Carl, who came with Letty. The second was Edmund, who came with a mysterious friend. With every new clue, Richard feels the walls closing in. Someone has been orchestrating a complex deception, and he's determined to uncover the truth before it's too late. In the next episode, Richard Brown once again meets with his criminal psychologist, Dr. Reichwen, to discuss Carl, the young man who discovered Edmund Foreign's body. Their conversation then drifts to Richard's personal life, with Reichwen reminding him that he stays sober. He might one day see his daughter again. For context, Richard's former detective career wasn't the only thing that came crashing down due to alcohol. His wife left him, and he hasn't seen his daughter in ages. The psychologist's words are firm. Never touch alcohol again. Richard then recalls the night he shot Stefan Yass, a 17-year-old accused of murdering 9 women. Unfortunately, Richard was drinking on duty that night, a mistake that cost him his badge and left him haunted by Yass's face. Seeking answers beyond his work, Richard then meets his estranged wife. She delivers painful news. Their daughter still is not ready to see him.
She's made up her mind. I didn't want to force her. It's her decision.
Hey, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
Disheartened, Richard walks into a bar and orders a whiskey, staring at the glass for a long moment. Instead of drinking, he leaves, the promise that he made to himself still intact. Meanwhile, Johan continues to influence Carl, urging him to tell Schuld the truth about their connection. Carl refuses, fearing that Schuld will assume that he's just another young man chasing an inheritance. But Johan insists that there must be proof of their relationship. Carl finally reveals that his mother once gave him a rabbit's foot, a token Schuld had intended to give his son when he was a child. Yet Carl refuses to use it as evidence. Seeing that Carl is unsure about revealing his true identity, Johan says he'll keep the rabbit's foot for him, just in case he changes his mind. When Carl finally sees him, Schuld presents the rabbit's foot, the very token Carl had kept hidden. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Schuld asks. The reunion of father and son happens at last, and then, with a tone of certainty, he reveals the person who explained everything to him, Johan. From this moment on, Schuld announces Johan will be working as his secretary. This kinda was the long-term plan by Johan. At first, he wanted to use Edmund as a link to Schuld, but when Carl turned out to be the real son, he had no use for Edmund any longer. With the experience he gained managing the underground bank as a 15-year-old, it seems Johan's goal here is to get as much influence within Schuld's inner circle, and maybe one day, just maybe, he too will be able to throw Germany's markets into a state of shock with a single phone call. In the next episode, Richard sits across from Schuld, expecting to discuss his ongoing investigation into Edmund's death. But Schuld has made up his mind. He wants Richard to drop the case. Now that Carl has been confirmed as his son, there's no need to dig any deeper. Reluctantly, Richard agrees, but something gnaws at him. Before leaving, he hears a name that catches his attention, Johan. Someone named Johan is now working closely with Schuld. As Richard heads home that evening, he rides the U-Bahn, the German underground subway, lost in thought. And just as he nears the edge of the platform, he feels a subtle shift, as if someone is preparing to push him onto the tracks. He turns sharply, but there's no one obvious. The feeling lingers, however. Somebody must be watching him. Somebody wants him gone. Determined to find answers, Richard revisits an old case, the Stefan Yass murders. As he pores over the files, something clicks. What if all these seemingly separate murders by Yass were actually connected? He brings his theory to Dr. Reichven, explaining that every victim had some link to Schuld. One by one, they had been eliminated, as if someone was carefully cutting away Schultz's connection to the world. Dr. Reichven, troubled by Richard's findings, shares a letter that he received from a former student, Rudy Gillan. Yep, Tenma's old friend, Rudy Gillan. The letter describes an interview Rudy had with the convicted murderer, Peter Jürgens. The killer admitted he took a life because a friend asked him to. That friend's name? Johan. Because of these overlaps between Richard and Rudy's investigations, Johan becomes a person of interest. Richard and Reichven put the pieces together. If they're right, Johan has been engineering deaths for the past 4 years, manipulating events to sever Schultz from the world, with the most recent example being Edmund Foreign. In this episode, Richard wants to reconnect with his daughter. He meets his ex-wife and gives her an envelope full of newspaper clippings about the Stefan Jost case. He hopes that by knowing the truth about his past, his daughter will understand him better. His ex-wife takes the envelope, but doesn't promise anything. Meanwhile, Richard continues his investigation into Johan. He travels to Offenbach, where he meets a couple named the Lieberts. Not the same Lieberts from the first episode, just to be clear. They happily tell him about their son Johan, who studies at a university in Munich. But when Richard digs deeper, he finds something strange. Their real son actually died in 1978. The couple had altered old records pretending their son never really passed away. At the same time, Dr. Reichven gives Rudy Gillan a photo of Johan, hoping his informant, Peter Jürgens, can confirm if this is the same Johan who influenced him. Jürgens initially says he doesn't recognize the person in the photo, but then, suddenly, he asks Rudy for a pen. Without warning, Jürgens repeatedly mutters the phrase, "Come with us," and he takes his own life. Shocked, Rudy immediately calls Reichven, realizing Johann's influence is far more dangerous than they thought. That night, Richard gets a phone call from his daughter. She's finally ready to meet him. It's a small but meaningful moment for him. Maybe he's finally getting a second chance. But soon after, there's a knock at his door. It's Johan. Johan greets Richard politely, reminding him that they met at Schultz's residence. Then they go for a drink. At the bar, Johan asks Richard if he wants whiskey. Richard, trying to stay sober, refuses. Johan buys a bottle anyway. As they walk through the city, Johan starts talking about Stefan Jost, the boy Richard shot years ago. He reveals that Jost had been at Kinderheim 511, a place connected to all the horrors Richard had been investigating. When they reach a rooftop, Johan pushes further, accusing Richard of executing Jost without proof and lying about being drunk to justify it. Then he goes straight for Richard's deepest insecurity, asking if a man like him can ever truly change or deserve his daughter's forgiveness. Johan then offers Richard the bottle of whiskey. The next day, the police visit Dr. Reichven. They tell him that Richard Brown is dead.
Mr. Brown, this charade has gone on long enough. Were you really drunk when you pulled the trigger?
It's never made clear whether Richard jumped to his death or got pushed, but Johan's ability to control the actions of others with mere words has been very well documented. In the meantime, Richard's fight for redemption ends with a bottle of whiskey that he may or may not have drunk. Next episode, Dr. Reichven isn't buying the official story about Richard's death. The police believe he was drunk from whiskey and fell off from the rooftop by accident. In his quest to find out the truth, Reichven heads to the U-Bahn, where he suddenly senses danger. Just as someone is about to shove him onto the tracks, he dodges and chases the guy through the station. He follows him to a bar, corners him, and demands to know who sent him. The guy, clearly not built for high-pressure interrogations, completely panics. Before he can answer, one of his buddies jumps in, and suddenly Reichven finds himself in an alleyway brawl. Reichven isn't exactly Bruce Lee, but he does hold his own. After throwing a few punches, he gets his answer. The guy was paid by a big man at the subway. Now with a lead, Reichven heads to the red light district, looking for Margot Langer. Yeah, Carl's supposed mother. Tells him she hasn't seen Margot in a while, that maybe she ran off with a new guy. Big guy, she adds. Reichven's stomach sinks. He knows exactly who that sounds like.
Oh yeah, so you want that fat old hag? Is that what floats your boat, Gramps?
No, wait, it's not like that.
Oh, you're blushing.
Back at his office, he gets an uninvited visitor, Roberto, one of the most dangerous men in this whole mess, pretending to be a patient. Reichven, to his credit, doesn't stick around to chat. He bolts out the back door, with Roberto hot on his heels. They then race through the fire escape, and just when it looks like Reichven is finally out of options, bang, Tenma arrives, gun in hand, ready to save the day. In the next episode, Dr. Reichven, Tenma, and Dieter visit one of Schultz's enterprises. From a distance, they see Schultz himself standing with Carl, and there he is, Johan, the man at the center of everything. Later that day, Reichven finds Dieter outside his house looking worried. Tenma's gone, Dieter announces. He's going to become a killer. Meanwhile, Inspector Lunge pays a visit to Rudy Gillan and starts grilling him about his recent trip to Munich, his connection to Reichsfinn, and whether he helped Tenma escape. Rudy, unfazed, tells Lunge straight up that Tenma is innocent. He even pulls out a detailed report to prove it. But Lunge, being Lunge, barely looks at it.
Inspector, I wouldn't say that Dr. Tenma and I were even friends when we attended Dusseldorf.
Rudy sighs and tries another approach. He hands Lunge a photo of Johan. This at least gets the inspector's attention. He pockets the picture and asks about Tenma's whereabouts. A short while later, Lunge makes a call, informing the authorities that Tenma is in Munich. And just in case anybody still doubted what he's up to, Tenma is soon spotted making a very specific purchase: a sniper rifle. In this episode, Tenma is practicing with his sniper rifle.
But you won't have time to re-aim and fire off all 4 of them. Really? 1 shot's the most you're gonna get.
His sights set on Johan. He watches Johan, Schuald, and Karl take a walk, waiting for the right moment. This is when an old man passing through notices Tenma, and seeing him return to the forest day after day, casually asks if he's here for birdwatching. Tenma just gives a vague response, probably thinking that assassination isn't the kind of small talk you bring up with strangers. For days, Tenma follows Johan but can't bring himself to pull the trigger. One day, he finally decides that the woods would be the best place to take the shot. That same day, he finds the old man from before, wounded and in bad shape. Setting his sniper mission aside, Tenma treats his injuries. As he helps him, the old man tells a story from his past. When he was young, birds used to perch on his shoulder, as if they trusted him completely. Then, during the regime, he became a police officer and was sent to chase down a criminal in these very woods. He tracked the man down. But when he saw him, he realized that he wasn't a criminal at all, just a foreigner who had the misfortune of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He shot him anyway. Ever since then, the old man has returned to these woods seeking forgiveness. Yet the birds never landed on him again. As he finishes his story, something incredible happens. A bird perches on Tenma's shoulder. The old man watches in awe and whispers that blood will never be shed in this forest again. Tenma, still holding his sniper rifle, looks down at the bird, realizing that fate might have just sent him a message. In the following episode, Schuald is preparing for a donation to the University of Munich's library, a major event that will be celebrated with a ceremony. Johan and Karl visit the library to scope things out. While there, Johan stumbles across a particular book, a picture book titled The Nameless Monster, and the moment he sees it, he screams repeatedly and faints. Take note of this very important moment, because Johan saw something that unlocked the memories of his past that he's been trying to suppress. Word of the upcoming ceremony reaches Tenma as well. Realizing that this might be his best chance, he also makes his way to the library, carefully planning how to kill Johan. Fortunately, there are no birds this time to run interference. In this next one, Johan receives a mysterious letter which he traces back to Blue Sophie in the red light district. Sophie brags about how she took on Margot Langer's identity and started squeezing Schuald for money. But she isn't just here to share old gossip. She has put the pieces together and figured out that Johan was behind the deaths of Richard Brown and Edmund Foreign. And now, with that knowledge, she plans to blackmail him. Johan, after the picture of calm, simply walks away. But Sophie barely has the time to pat herself on the back before her new boyfriend Roberto steps in. Unfortunately for her, Roberto isn't just a charming guy. He's Johan's personal cleanup crew. Sophie's blackmailing days end then and there. Meanwhile, Tenma, also one step behind but never giving up, investigates Sophie's murder. His search leads him to a young Vietnamese doctor who specializes in treating undocumented immigrants. From the scraps of information the doctor provides, Tenma realizes that Johan orchestrated Blue Sophie's death. In episode 35, Inspector Lunge arrives in Munich, determined to dig deeper into Tenma's past. He tracks down a group of Tenma's Japanese acquaintances who are in town for business with Schuald. Just as Lunge is getting comfortable in his investigation, he gets an unexpected call from his daughter. She reveals that she's living in Munich and wants to meet up so he can finally meet his grandchild. A rare moment of personal connection? Perhaps. But as usual, duty calls. Lunge spends the evening at a karaoke bar with the Japanese businessmen, completely missing the meeting with his daughter. Among the group is a man named Yamamoto, who just so happens to have brought a copy of The Nameless Monster, the same picture book that caused Johan to fall unconscious back at the library. Curious, Lunge flips through its pages and translates a passage.
Right! That's great! About time! We've been waiting for you! Hope you guys been practicing!
Look at me. Look at me. The monster inside of me has grown this big. Yeah, that's, not really a bedtime story. Meanwhile, Rudy Gillan interviews a murderer with ties to Johan and uncovers a chilling pattern. Johan has a habit of eliminating his foster parents. If this pattern holds, his current ones, the Lieberts, are next. Dr. Reichman rushes to warn them, spelling out just how dangerous their son really is. Suffice it to say, it's not the heartwarming family visit that they were expecting. That evening, Tenma sneaks into the university library, rifle in hand, preparing to take his shot at Johan during the book donation ceremony the next day. In this episode, Dr. Reichman pays a visit to Schuwald, laying out the chilling truth about Johan. He explains how Johan meticulously orchestrated every murder to isolate Schuwald, slowly tightening his grip around him. Schuwald, however, remains outwardly composed, though deep down, he already suspects that Johan has been maneuvering to take over his empire. Meanwhile, Tenma wakes up in the library, rifle in hand, ready to end Johan once and for all. The book donation ceremony is about to begin, and as Schuwald and Carl arrive, Schuwald suddenly asks Carl to fetch a document that he forgot in his study. Kind of convenient timing, perhaps. Regardless, Carl leaves, unknowingly removing himself from the danger zone. When Lunge learns that Tenma recently purchased a sniper rifle, his detective instincts kick in. He puts himself in Tenma's shoes, piecing together the puzzle. If Tenma has a rifle, who is the target? After some deduction and dramatic typing motions in the air, Lunge lands on a conclusion. Tenma must be going after Schuwald.
And now I have this high-precision gun. I killed several middle-aged couples across Germany.
Meanwhile, at the train station, Letty meets Nina, who's preparing to leave Munich. Before she departs, Letty drops a bombshell. She's figured out that Nina and Johan are twins. As proof, she hands Nina a copy of the picture book that Johan was reading when he fainted. Nina flips through the pages, and suddenly memories start to flood back. The night she shot Johan. The night that everything changed. In this episode, Nina keeps flipping through the pages of The Nameless Monster. It's a story of a monster with no name. It splits in two, with one going east and the other going west. The eastern monster consumes numerous people after taking their identity. This continues until the eastern monster finally meets the western counterpart. The eastern monster ends up eating the western monster. Yeah, you might want to remember this story. Letty, ever the curious mind, starts connecting dots. She tells Nina that she has a gut feeling. Edmund Farren's and Richard Brown's suicides and Blue Sophie's death all seem to point back to one person, Johan. And guess what? Johan just so happens to be attending the book donation ceremony at the university library. Hearing this, Nina quickly checks her bag for a pistol. She wastes no time and heads out. At the ceremony, Tenma watches Johan through his sniper's scope, but doubt starts to creep in. He remembers Adolf Junker's last moment, the Fortner's tragic deaths, and Mr. Maurer's murder. His finger hesitates on the trigger. And this is when Roberto strikes. Appearing out of nowhere, the hulking assassin smashes into Tenma, grabbing the sniper rifle. If Tenma won't shoot, Roberto will, straight at Schuwald. But Tenma fights back, managing to throw off Roberto's aim just in time. Down below, Schuwald finally pieces together Johan's sinister game. Mid-speech, he calmly tells the attendees to run for their lives, but it's too late. One of Johan's accomplices sets the place on fire. Flames spread, and chaos erupts as people scramble to escape. Roberto and Tenma have a standoff, both aiming weapons at each other. Then a gunshot rings out, but we don't know who's been shot. Man, we gotta get to the next one quickly. In the next episode, Tenma has shot Roberto on the shoulder, but when that proves inadequate, he shoots him again, sending the towering assassin tumbling from the balcony. This is now, officially, the first time that Tenma has killed somebody. Or is it? But there's no time to speculate, because the fire is spreading fast. Meanwhile, amidst the heat and smoke, Johan stands before Schuwald watching the inferno like it's a stage set just for him. Schuwald, finally seeing Johan's true nature, demands answers about where Johan came from. Johan presses his hands against Schuwald's head and whispers a story, that he was born in a fairy tale country where everybody died, that he walked away from destruction hand in hand with his other half. To him, it felt like they were the only two people left in the world, and neither one of them possessed a real name. Yeah, this might be something straight from that picture book we know so well. Soon after, Tenma finally comes face to face with Johan. Nina follows suit, also pointing a gun at Johan. This is the moment that they've been waiting for, and yet, neither of them can pull the trigger. Johan, completely unbothered, simply smiles and strolls away. Vanishing into the smoke like a ghost. After inspecting the fire scene, Lunge heads straight to the hospital, determined to question Schuwald about the incident. But when he arrives, the hospital staff blocks him from speaking with the old man. No problem, Lunge finds Carl instead. Lunge shows Carl a picture of Tenma, and declares that he's the man who tried to kill Schuwald. Carl, unfazed, hands Lunge a photo of Johan Liebert, telling him to find Johan instead. Lunge then starts connecting the dots. After the library fire, Johan is completely vanished, and for the first time, Lunge allows himself to consider something unsettling. Maybe Johan is real after all. Elsewhere, Nina works with Dr. Reichman and Dr. Rudy, trying to unlock the memories trapped in her mind. You see, Nina still doesn't remember her childhood before she was 10 years old. With the doctor's help, she starts getting flashes of memories. Memories about a town which she describes as straight out of a fairy tale, and a building with an image of 3 frogs. Soon enough, it all begins to click, as she remembers vital pieces of her origin. Without hesitation, Nina prepares to go to this fairy tale town which holds a lot of answers. This is the city of Prague. It's not an actual fairy tale location. Anyway, Dieter insists that he's coming with her. Over in the city of Dresden, Carl meets Tenma and delivers a strange message from his father, directing him towards the location of the building with the 3 frog signpost.
It's you!
The man who was attempting to assassinate your father. Is that what the police told you?
And then he informs Tenma that the biological mother of Johan and Nina is still alive. She's somewhere in the city of Prague, and so everybody's about to converge in the Czech Republic. In the 40th episode, we are introduced to the smiley-faced Wolfgang Grimmer, a cheerful yet mysterious freelance journalist on his way to Prague, chasing a story about the infamous Kinderheim 511. At the Dresden train station, he happens to board the same train as Tenma. By pure coincidence, or maybe fate, the two end up sitting in the same compartment, striking up a conversation. Their chat is pleasant enough, but things take a turn when border police arrive to check their passports. With an easygoing smile, Grimmer casually mentions to Tenma that his Japanese passport is definitely fake, that the police have probably already caught on. No big deal, because he helps Tenma escape from the police.
You need to get moving. Right now, Dr. Tenma.
How is it that you know who I am?
That's not important.
Grimmer, intrigued by the situation, later catches up and tells Tenma that he knows exactly who he is. After all, he's read the newspapers. But here's the thing. Grimmer prides himself on his ability to separate the guilty from the innocent. And to him, Tenma doesn't look like a killer. Before parting ways, he explains the safest way to the Czech border, and Tenma thanks him for the help. Later, in a cozy cafe at Old Town Square in Prague, Grimmer gets back to business. He meets with Mikhail Petrov, though the man's real name is Reinhard Behrman, the former director of Kinderheim 511 before the place turned into a horror show. With his usual charm, Grimmer starts asking questions, determined to uncover the truth about what really happened in that sinister institution. In this next episode, Grimmer tails Petrov through the winding streets of Prague, casually bringing up the infamous incident that destroyed Kinderheim 511 and pressing him for answers. Petrov bristles at this, insisting that the chaos happened after he left. If he had still been in charge, things would have never spiraled out of control. Before the conversation can go further, 2 young kids rush up, calling Petrov Grandpa. Grimmer raises an eyebrow, because something doesn't add up. The next morning, Grimmer wakes up in his hotel room, probably expecting a quiet start to the day. But a messenger knocks on the door, claiming to have something from Mr. Petrov. Grimmer, sensing that something shady is about to go down, makes a quick exit, straight out the window. Moments later, 2 armed goons bust in, only to find an empty room. Later, Grimmer catches up with Petrov again, and refusing to let this mystery slide, spends the whole day shadowing him. He notices something strange. The kids calling Petrov Grandpa are never the same ones. This leads him straight to Petrov's house, where the mystery deepens. Inside, Grimmer finds a dozen children. Turns out Petrov is actually running an orphanage. Petrov explains that these kids were born in the red light district along the Czech-German border and abandoned after the Berlin Wall fell. Grimmer, still skeptical, worries that Petrov might be trying to recreate Kinderheim 511 under a new name. Threatening to report Petrov for running an unlicensed orphanage, Grimmer gets an unexpected response: a deal. Petrov offers him valuable data about Kinderheim 501's experiments in exchange for keeping quiet. Grimmer doesn't answer right away. Instead, he gathers all the kids and tells them to go play football. And then, something clicks. Watching the children laugh and play, Grimmer realizes something astonishing. Petrov isn't recreating Kinderheim 511, he's doing the exact opposite. He's trying to fix the damage that he caused. Feeling hopeful, Grimmer rushes back to Petrov's place, only to find a grim scene. Petrov has been shot. As he lies dying, Petrov, with his last bit of strength, tells Grimmer about a key to his safe deposit box. Inside there is a tape, an interview with a young boy who caused the destruction of Kinderheim 511.
That boy is the malevolent monster. His darkness and evil influence.
As Grimmer processes this, his eyes catch a figure slipping away, a blonde woman. She looks eerily like Nina, but by the time that he reacts, she's already gone. Next episode. Following Petrov's death, Grimmer finds himself at the police station sitting across from the serious-faced Inspector Zeman. The inspector isn't just asking routine questions, he's poking, prodding, and pressing about the circumstances of Petrov's murder. Most intriguingly, he brings up a mysterious blonde woman spotted at the scene. Then comes the big question, did Petrov say anything before he died? Grimmer, keeping his cards close, simply says no. Outside the station, Grimmer meets the kids from Petrov's orphanage. Bureaucracy is kicked in, and they're being split up and sent to different orphanages across Prague. Among them is Antonin, one of the older boys. Grimmer, in a moment of trust, slips him the key to the safety deposit box that Petrov mentioned. With that, Grimmer hails a taxi and asks for a ride back to his hotel. Just as he settles in, the driver stops to pick up another passenger, a man who takes the front seat, silent, but with an air of menace. A few minutes in, the stranger finally speaks. Give me the key. Grimmer, however, has no intention of cooperating. The taxi then veers off course, leaving the city behind and heading into an abandoned industrial complex. As soon as they stop, Grimmer bolts, but his escape is short-lived. Inspector Zeman is already there, waiting, confirming what Grimmer has begun to suspect. This isn't just about a murder investigation. These men are remnants of the old Czechoslovakian secret police, and they want that tape. What follows isn't pretty. Grimmer is beaten mercilessly, his captors demanding to know the whereabouts of the cassette. Bloodied but still defiant, Grimmer does what only he can do in a moment like this. He starts talking about an old West German cartoon from the 60s, The Adventures of the Magnificent Steiner. It's about a mild-mannered man who, when pushed to the brink, transforms into an unstoppable force of justice. What a man. The secret police thugs aren't impressed. They keep hitting him until he blacks out. Then the Nina-looking woman appears and fires a gun. When Grimmer regains consciousness, everything is different. For one, 3 bodies are sprawled around him. One of the men has been shot, but the other 2, no gunshots, just brutal hand-delivered justice. Grimmer stares at his own hands, breathing heavily. There is clearly more to him than meets the eye. Looks like the Magnificent Steiner isn't just a cartoon anymore. Next episode, we see rookie Detective Suk arrive at the scene. 3 dead bodies. Inspector Zeman and 2 former Czechoslovakian secret police officers brutally taken out in an abandoned industrial complex. To make things weirder, there was blood at the scene that didn't belong to any of the victims. He starts throwing up. Frustrated, Suk finds solace in the time-honored tradition of drowning his troubles at a bar. This is when she walks in, blonde, beautiful, and looking eerily like Nina Fortner. Looking kind of tipsy now, Suk spills his troubles to her, ranting about Inspector Zeman's death. The woman responds cryptically that she doesn't even know her own name. The only thing she remembers are the name of the bridge near her house and the 3 frogs. Most people would take that as a sign to leave her alone. Suk, however, is not most people. As he chases after her another day and unknowingly runs into Tenma outside the 3 Frogs building. Meanwhile, Detective Patera, a high-ranking officer, has already informed Suk to stop looking into the death of Inspector Zeman and his connection with the Czech secret police. That aside, Patera is also a womanizer, and so after Suk had mentioned his girl he met at the bar, Patera tracks down Nina at the same bar. She ditches him effortlessly, but as a parting gift, hands him a bag of whiskey bonbons. A sweet gesture.
But you didn't do anything to her, did you, sir? Please, say you didn't!
Now, come on, Suk.
As that goes down, Grimmer's name comes up as a suspect in the recent cop murders. Later on, while snooping through Zeman's office, Suk discovers a key to the locker. Inside, he finds an intriguing book containing files on every officer at the precinct, all except 2, Detectives Patera and Janacek. Even more suspicious, a fat envelope stuffed with cash that smelled of corruption. With a growing sense of unease, Suk takes his findings to the police commissioner, hoping he'd do the right thing. Spoiler alert, it was a big mistake. Back at police headquarters, a secret meeting is underway. Patera, Janacek, and the commissioner sit together, nervously discussing their growing problem. Detective Suk has uncovered way too much, including info about the Czech secret police, which is a no-go area. As they debate how to get rid of him, Patera casually offers them some of the whiskey bonbons. Moments later, all 3 men slump over, their corruption meeting a bitter, but ironically sweet, end. This episode, we find out that Detective Suk is tracking down Wolfgang Grimmer, who has a suspicious habit of being near dead bodies. Suk decides to start at Mikhail Petrov's orphanage, questioning the kids about their late caretaker's murder. The children naturally have a different agenda, defending Grimmer like he's some kind of superhero. They claim that the killer was a blonde woman that they saw leaving the crime scene. One of the kids, Antonin, also mentions that Grimmer will be in the park later. At the park, Grimmer is in his element, playing football with the kids like he doesn't have a care in the world. When Antonin hands back the key to Petrov's safety deposit box, Grimmer takes it with a smile, then goes right back to dribbling. Soon after, Suk shows up, ready to arrest Grimmer, but after a few minutes of conversation, doubt starts to creep in. Grimmer doesn't act like a man with blood on his hands. Against his better judgment, Suk lets him go, with a firm promise that Grimmer wouldn't run away. Grimmer agrees, hands him the safety deposit box key, and then immediately walks away.
Over the past few days, some of the people I deeply trusted betrayed me. My faith in them was so totally shattered, I don't know what to believe in anymore.
Later, Suk meets up with Nina and spills about the safety deposit box, before leaning for a kiss. Nina politely refuses and then returns to her apartment, greeting the friendly neighbors with a polite nod. But inside, the truth gets revealed. The person who's been charming their way through Prague isn't Nina at all. It's Johan Liebert, wearing his sister's face like a perfect disguise. His reason for pulling this insane stunt gradually becomes clear as he keeps interacting with Suk. In the next episode, a newly introduced Commissioner Napella is starting to suspect Detective Suk. After the rather inconvenient deaths of several corrupt officers, Napella isn't buying the idea that Suk is just a clueless detective caught in the middle, so he orders a tail on him just in case he decides to drop dead bodies wherever he goes. Oblivious to the fact that he's now Prague's most suspicious cop, Suk meets up with Grimmer at Old Town Square. The two discuss the messy Inspector Zeman's case and the mysterious safety deposit box that Suk has the key to. Grimmer casually points out that they are being watched. Meanwhile, Johan Liebert, blonde, calm, and terrifying, sits at a nearby table, blending into the scenery like the world's most dangerous chameleon. Deciding it is time for answers, Suk and Grimmer open the safety deposit box. Inside, they find a few files and a cassette tape. They play the tape, and immediately things get disturbing. It's a recording from Kinderheim 511, Johan's voice drugged up and detached, reciting a passage from The Nameless Monster before recounting how he and his sister had crossed the Czechoslovakian border.
The monster inside of me is getting bigger. Munch, munch, chomp, chomp.
Grimmer listens until something in the tape triggers an old, painful memory of Kinderheim 511. Both men part ways after Suk gives Grimmer his address and phone number. When Suk gets home, two detectives, Novak and Xander, are waiting for him. They have questions about Mikhail Petrov, but the real interest lies in what they found in his apartment, a packet of bonbons and a suspicious-looking tube of chemicals. Not exactly the kind of snacks that an innocent detective keeps lying around. They intend to arrest him. Now sweating, Suk asks for a moment to change clothes. The detectives agree, unaware that their clock is ticking. Meanwhile, Grimmer, who's developed an unsettling sixth sense for trouble, sprints towards Suk's apartment. As he rushes up the stairs, a blonde woman, fake Nina, brushes past him on her way down. Grimmer bursts into Suk's apartment to find Suk standing there, frozen in horror. Novak and Xander lay dead. It's just another normal day in Prague. In this episode, while digging into the dark history of the former Czechoslovakian secret police and their little post-communist crime syndicate, Tenma stumbles upon Detective Suk's case. A detective framed for murdering his corrupt superiors using poisoned candy? Sounds a little too familiar. It was almost a nostalgic callback to his own life-ruining experience back in 1986. Determined to help, Tenma pays a visit to Suk's mother, Mrs. Sukova, at the hospital. However, since Mrs. Sukova suffers from Alzheimer's, she mistakes Tenma for her own son. Not one to waste an opportunity, Tenma plays along, gently prying for information. He learns about Suk's secret hideout. On the other hand, the real Suk has left something very important behind. The cassette tape, hidden with his unsuspecting mother. Suk and Grimmer, now on the run, quickly reach Suk's secret hideout. There, Grimmer casually tells Suk about a certain young surgeon who had once been accused of killing his superiors with poison candy, and has been running ever since. Suk groans that he isn't built for that life. He has to prove his innocence. But that's not happening anytime soon because assassins have come knocking. A sniper across the street takes a shot, hitting Suk, and he goes down, bleeding very badly. Before the attackers can finish the job, Grimmer, mild-mannered journalist, amateur football coach, and part-time human weapon, has a moment. A very magnificent Steiner kind of moment. His alter ego takes over, and within minutes, every single assassin in the building gets unalived.
The magnificent Steiner! All right, everyone, are you ready for action?
Tenma arrives at the hideout just in time to find Grimmer standing over a battlefield, and Suk barely holding on. Wasting no time, Tenma works to save Suk's life. He stabilizes him before getting him to a hospital. In the aftermath, Grimmer finally opens up. He tells Tenma that he's been in Kinderheim 511, that he'd been trained as an East German spy. Out of all the horrors that he had endured, all the skills they had drilled into him, there's one thing that he had the hardest time mastering: learning how to smile. In the following episode, Tenma and Grimmer arrive at the hospital where Suk is supposed to be recovering. only to find out that he's actually missing. While Tenma tries to figure out how things have gone sideways this time, Grimmer fills him in on a crucial detail. The cassette tape that he and Suk listened to earlier contains a recording of Johan as a child, drugged and being interviewed at Kinderheim 511. In other words, it's a dangerous piece of evidence that a lot of people would kill for. Before they can come up with a plan, they are forcibly invited to meet Karol Runke, a former captain of the Czechoslovakian secret police. Runke, all too polite for someone involved in shady dealings, assures them that Suk is alive and safe, for now. But there is a catch. An important German buyer wants the tape and accompanying files, and Runke is willing to trade Suk for them. Elsewhere in Prague, Nina, the real Nina this time, arrives in the city with Dieter only to be met with confused faces and people calling her Anna. This is the name that Johan used in his disguise. She follows the clues to the three frogs, and the moment she steps inside, memories crash over her. A picture book, the nameless monster, a shadowy figure, a staircase leading somewhere she is afraid to go.
This memory is real. I've been here before. I was reading a picture book.
Back with Tenma and Grimmer, they meet with Runke once again. This time, Grimmer has made up his mind. No deals, no trades. The files and tape aren't going anywhere, but he will let Runke listen to the tape one time. But only under one condition. Runke has to promise to drop the whole idea of selling it. No business, just personal curiosity. Runke, perhaps realizing there's no point pushing further, takes them in another direction instead. He tells them about Franz Bonaparta, a man who's been part of the Czechoslovakian secret police. Now, listeners, pay close attention. This marks a turning point in the series. Bonaparta is as important to the story of Monster as Johan, because Johan would not have existed if not for the actions of Bonaparta. Aside from being an unusually powerful secret police agent, Bonaparta is also a writer of children's books who wrote under different pseudonyms. Among his literary works is a very familiar title, The Nameless Monster. The guy had his office at a place called the Red Rose Mansion, which will be an important plot point too. Moving on to the next episode. Johan, still flawlessly playing his Anna persona, pays a visit to Suk's mother at the hospital. After letting her ramble about her son, he gently brings up a small detail, something her dear son had left with her, a cassette tape. Mrs. Sukova doesn't think much about the request. A kind young woman asking about her son? There's nothing strange about it at all. And so Johan walks away, leaving behind nothing but the faint scent of a presence that was never really there. Not long after, Tenma, Grimmer, and Runke arrive at the hospital. When they hear that a young blonde woman has just been there, alarm bells start to go off. They rush to Mrs. Sukova's room. She's confused but kind. She hands over the cassette tape, blissfully unaware of how many people have been killed for it. But before they leave, she has one request. She wants to see her son. Runke agrees, and Mrs. Sukova finally reunites with Suk, her memory fading in and out, but her relief completely genuine. Tenma, Grimmer, and Runke then start listening to the tape. The voice of young Johan fills the room. His words are unsettling, spoken in a dreamlike monotone. He talks about losing his memories, about the experiments at Kinderheim 511, but then his voice begins to waver. What scares him the most isn't the experiments, it's forgetting his sister Anna, who means the world to him. And then the tape glitches. Another voice interrupts, smooth, cold, and unmistakable. The adult Johan. He leaves them a message recorded over the original interview, saying this is all he can allow them to hear. He lets Tenma know that having listened to the full recording, he now knows where he must go.
Where I must go. I finally figured it out. Dr. Tenma.
In another part of Prague, a familiar figure arrives on vacation. Though for Lunge, vacation is just a fancy word for a work trip. Commissioner Napella briefs him on the tangled web of murder and conspiracy. Mikhail Petrov, Inspector Zeman, the poison candy, all of it. Lunge listens, piecing things together in that meticulous way of his. Then, as casually as if you were ordering coffee, he asks Napella to translate the monster without a name. Next stop, Moravia Publishing Co., the company responsible for the nameless monster. Lunge asks questions, scans records, and soon a name surfaces. One that ties everything together, Franz Bonaparta, a man of many pseudonyms. One of them is Emil Scherbe, the writer behind The Monster Without a Name. Lunge finds one of Bonaparta's old sketchbooks. Inside there are drawings of a pregnant woman, 2 newborns, and then 2 children, a boy and a girl, twins. By episode 49, the kids from Petrov's orphanage have made up their minds. They're going to clear Grimmer's name. After all, he was so good to them. And if the police won't find the real killer, then they will. Armed with nothing but determination and childlike audacity, they take to the streets of Prague, hunting for the mysterious blonde woman. Then Miloš sees her, or at least he thinks that he does. She's sitting there, calm as ever, golden-haired and elegant. Meanwhile, Tenma and Grimmer search Petrov's apartment only to find notes left behind by the kids, scrawled out messages declaring Grimmer's innocence and pointing to the blonde woman as the real killer. Their next stop is the orphanage itself, where Tenma listens as Grimmer shares something deeply personal. He tells Tenma that he doesn't feel emotions the way that other people do. He doesn't always know how to react, what expressions to wear, what feelings to show. It's like there is something missing. Then Antonin arrives. His face is troubled. He tells them that they found the blonde girl, but now Milos is missing. Back in Johan's apartment, still wearing his sister's face, Johan sits with Milos. The boy tells him that he's searching for his mother. A simple human thing, but Johan has a different way of looking at it. He asks Milos if he is sure his parents even wanted him. The words slip under Milos' skin like a slow poison. By the time Tenma and Grimmer track them down, it's too late.
If it should happen that nobody calls out to you, then that means you aren't wanted by anyone in the world.
Johan and Milos are gone. Later, as they search for Milos, Grimmer tells Tenma a story, one that still lingers in his mind like a ghost. His son had died. At the funeral, his ex-wife had turned to him, eyes filled with something he couldn't quite understand. She asked him why he wasn't crying. She told him that there was nothing in his heart, and then she left. As the words hang between them, Tenma suddenly understands. If Johan has taken Milos anywhere, it's to the worst possible place. The place that will break him. And he's right. Milos and Johan, still in disguise, arrive at the red light district along the Czech border. It's a world of neon-lit misery where humanity is stripped down to its ugliest form. As Milos wanders around looking for his mom in the filth and desperation, Johan's words keep echoing in his head. His mother abandoned him. Nobody wanted him. Then something even more horrifying happens. A German professor, drunk and indifferent, finishes his time with a right there on the street. He tells little Milos to watch, and then he pays him 500 Czech crowns for his time. Milos walks away, numb.
Think you were born because you were wanted?
And then he finds himself at a bridge, standing at the edge, staring down. When Tenma and Grimmer finally find him, he's teetering between despair and nothingness. Grimmer doesn't hesitate. He rushes forward and hugs Milos, holding on to him, as if only the sheer force of human connection could pull them back. He tells Milos that he doesn't have a mother, but he was born because somebody wanted him. And in this moment, something inside him cracks. For the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever, Grimmer starts to cry. And Milos, he hugs him back. In this episode, Lunge gets himself an audience with Karol Runke, an ex-Czechoslovakian secret police officer whose moral compass probably took a permanent vacation decades ago. Lunge tells him that he's looking for true terror, one which Runke himself might have helped create. Runke goes on to spill some details about Franz Bonaparta and the infamous Red Rose Mansion, where political prisoners and researchers one day poofed out of existence. Lunge asks if he can tear down a wall in the mansion because obviously there's gotta be something creepy hidden behind it. Runke gives him the go-ahead, but with a friendly little warning: you might die. Now, at the Red Rose Mansion, Lunge, in full demolition mode, smashes through the wall. Behind it, he finds a hidden door, and the moment he steps inside, the air hits him. The place reeks of antiseptic, like it's trying to cover up a whole lot of bad history. Then he sees a portrait of a blonde woman staring down at him. Lunge puts two and two together. This has to be the mother of the twins from that eerie sketchbook, the woman whose children might have been turned into something monstrous. Meanwhile, Grimmer has an idea. He tells Tenma he's going to send a letter to the police, taking the fall for Petrov and Siemens' murders. Well, he thinks Suk, who's been falsely accused, deserved to live a normal life. Then again, once he becomes the prime suspect, Grimmer plans to escape the authorities before he can be caught.
The truth of the matter is, Grimmer never really existed in the first place. It's not who I am. It's just a name I was arbitrarily assigned one day.
No thanks to his childhood training as a spy at Kinderheim 511, Tenma protests. But Grimmer has made up his mind and bids him farewell. Then shortly after this, following a tip-off by a man who recognized the accused serial killer doctor, the cops show up and arrest Tenma. Because if life were truly fair, well, this wouldn't be Monster. The episode starts with a quick flashback to 1976. Margot Langer, whose real name is Helenka Novakova, receives a letter from a friend in Prague. The message is short and sweet, but with a cryptic little detail. If you're ever in Prague again, you can find me at Sedok Bridge. The Three Frogs. We can already guess that it's a letter from the mother of Johan and Nina, and her address at the time was the Three Frogs building. Now, fast forward to the present, and Dr. Reichvin is in Prague, chasing whispers and half-truths. After scouring the city, he reports back to Mr. Schuld, admitting that the Three Frogs turned up nothing: no Nina, no Dieter, and definitely no Tenma. Schuld, deep in thought, recalls his own trip to Prague back in 1980, back when he was searching for Helenka. He, too, had gone to the Three Frogs expecting answers. Instead, he found a woman named Vera Cherna, Margot Langer's friend, and her twins. Meanwhile, the news of Tenma's arrest spreads like wildfire. His friends, colleagues, and even old patients rallied together. Mr. Schuald, knowing that Tenma might be the only person capable of stopping Johan, starts pulling strings to get him the best defense lawyers money can buy.
Could you wait outside? Miss Heinemann?
Kenzo.
Back at the hospital, Detective Suk hears about Tenma's arrest and immediately tries to bolt for the police station. But just as he reaches the door, two detectives cut him off with some unexpected news. He's off the hook. Turns out Grimmer, in a self-sacrificial move, has written a letter to the police confessing to the murders. Meanwhile, Inspector Lunge hears about Tenma's arrest and reacts with all the enthusiasm of a man who just learned his least favorite TV show just got cancelled. He barely looks up. He has bigger things on his mind. Like the Red Rose Mansion and the little detail he just uncovered. Hidden behind a painting of Nina and Johan's mother, he finds a note scrawled in delicate handwriting. A love letter from a monster to a beauty. Lunge, always the skeptic, reads it carefully. Then, for the first time in his life, he actually hesitates. Because now he knows. The monster is real. And while Lunge grapples with that chilling realization, Tenma is quietly, methodically deported back to Germany. Before departing, Lunge gave Tenma a pro tip. Keep your mouth shut. Tenma's fate, at least for now, is out of his hands. In the next episode, we go back to Germany. Tenma finds himself locked up, staring at the walls of his prison cell, probably wondering how his life went from saving lives to being framed for murder. Enter Gunter Milch, a professional con artist and former prison escapee who sees Tenma as his golden ticket out. Faking an illness to get close, he leans in and whispers his grand escape plan. But Tenma isn't exactly thrilled about a prison break. Later, the authorities interrogate him about the infamous Eisler Memorial Hospital poisonings. Tenma insists on telling the truth, even though everybody in the room is looking at him like he's trying to sell them a bridge. Outside the prison walls, lawyer Fritz Werdemann is minding his own business when he gets an offer to take Tenma's case. At first, he declines. Even Schuald himself couldn't convince him. But then a mysterious man named Alfred Ball, who was actually sent by Tenma's former patients, approaches him. And Werdemann finally gives in. Turns out Werdemann has his own complicated history. His father was accused of being a Czechoslovakian spy who murdered a politician during the Cold War and later defected to West Germany to start a freaking radio station. This guy was a proper rebel. However, soon after, he was prosecuted and sentenced to 20 years in prison. He died in prison too, before eventually getting exonerated. This injustice motivated a young Werdemann to become a legal warrior. With a backstory like that, you'd think he'd be more open to wild conspiracy theories. When Werdemann finally meets Tenma, he quickly realizes that Tenma's priority isn't proving his own innocence. It's actually proving that Johan exists. This man is sitting in prison, facing life behind bars, and all he can talk about is the time he saved a boy's life who turned out to be a monster. Tenma, still holding on to his all lives are equal mantra, explains how he was just doing his job when he saved Johan. Werdemann, sensing he's dealing with possibly the world's most morally unshakable man, announces that he will take this case.
That I should confess to some of the charges, admit to part of the crimes to lighten my sentence.
Meanwhile, Dr. Reichven, who's at this point basically Tenma's unofficial PR team, meets with Werdemann and lays out the real challenge, proving that Johan exists. Werdemann argues that whether or not Johan does exist, Tenma's still innocent. But for now, he's got a more pressing task, finding Eva Heinemann. Unfortunately, Eva isn't exactly low maintenance. She's back in Dusseldorf, sipping expensive drinks in a hotel room where Dr. Reichven knocks on her door. He asks her to meet with Werdemann, and she reluctantly agrees, but not before having a nightmare of Johan. As all this unfolds, Werdemann is suddenly called to the hospital. His wife is going into labor. Between defending a falsely accused surgeon and now becoming a father, his stress levels are off the chart. He asks his assistant to call Alfred Ball and send him to meet Tenma in his place. This is a big mistake, because Alfred Ball isn't Alfred Ball at all. He's Roberto, the human equivalent of a wrecking ball with a sniper rifle. He sits across from Tenma in prison and, in the creepiest way possible, lets him in on a little secret. Eva Heinemann is his next target. Tenma, already dealing with so much, now has one more thing to worry about: saving his alcoholic ex-fiancée from Johan's right-hand man. Next episode, Roberto tries selling Eva's death as a win-win situation for both of them. But Tenma isn't buying this. Tenma realizes that the prison break idea isn't so bad after all. And who better to ask for help than the self-proclaimed expert on escaping, Gunter Milch. Outside of prison, Eva Heinemann is finally giving her testimony to Werdemann. She recounts the fateful night she saw Johan after he killed Adolf Junkers. It's all going so well until Werdemann asks the golden question: would you be willing to say all this in court? After a pause, Eva refuses. Why? Because making Tenma's life miserable is apparently still her top priority. Back in prison, Tenma hatches an escape plan that is equal parts brilliant and ridiculous. He straight up confesses to killing Udo Heinemann, Dr. Oppenheim, Dr. Boyer, and Junkers. Yeah, he just throws it out there like he's ordering off a menu. So basically, this little confession lands him a transfer to a federal penitentiary in the same van as Milch. It's risky, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Outside, Dr. Reichven and Verdeman sees the news about Tenma's confession and nearly have simultaneous heart attacks. It's about as believable as a fish riding a bicycle.
Kenzo Tenma, who had previously maintained total silence about the charges, surprised authorities with his unexpected confession.
They rush to the station, but Tenma, clearly committed to the bit, refuses to see his lawyer. Verdeman, baffled and frustrated, calls Alfred Ball to update him. And, well, we all know who Alfred Ball really is. Roberto seizes this golden opportunity and casually asks Verdeman who this important witness is, who could prove Tenma's innocence. And just like that, Verdeman unknowingly hands him Ava's name and hotel location in Dusseldorf on a silver platter. Meanwhile, Ava has one of her rare moments of self-awareness. She reminisces about her time with Tenma, and in a shocking turn of events, decides she actually wants to help him. Unable to reach Verdeman, she makes the worst decision possible. She calls Alfred Ball. Just like that, she unknowingly signs her death warrant. In this episode, Tenma and Milch hatch a simple plan. Milch's brother Gustav will fake an accident on the road, forcing the prison transport van to stop. Then in the confusion, Tenma and Milch will make their grand escape. Except, things don't exactly go as planned. Instead of faking an accident, Gustav actually gets hit by the van. After getting distracted by his girlfriend, he doesn't just stumble in front of it and pretend to be hurt, he gets full-on run over.
You hit him? But how?
Milch, what part of sit down that's an order don't you understand?
That person was probably my little brother.
The guards panic. The escape plan falls apart in real time, and suddenly, instead of running for his freedom, Tenma finds himself being asked to check if the guy is even alive. Kneeling next to Gustav, Tenma quickly realizes two things. 1, Gustav is still breathing, but barely. And 2, he has a gun tucked away on him. In a split-second decision, Tenma grabs the gun, stands up, and points it at the guards. He orders them to release him and Milch. Meanwhile, across town, Ava Heinemann is getting ready to meet her lawyer, Alfred Ball. But just as she's about to head down to the hotel lobby, she catches a news report on TV. Tenma has escaped from prison. This isn't like him at all, she thinks. As she's still processing the news, she hears a voice. A low, familiar voice. It's Roberto. He's on the phone, just a few feet away, speaking to Verdeman about Tenma's escape. Panic hits her like a wave. She turns and bolts back to her room, slamming the door shut behind her. But as she catches her breath, her eyes land on something that makes her freeze. A cigarette butt sitting in the ashtray by the window. She doesn't smoke, which means Roberto's already been inside her room. Back on the road, Tenma is still trying to do the impossible. Stay on the run while also doing the right thing. He insists that they take Gustav to the hospital. Milch, however, was not exactly the let's do the right thing kind of type. He argues that there's no time. They need to run, that Gustav is already a lost cause. Tenma, however, does not budge. Instead, he points the gun at Milch. If they're escaping, they're doing it the right way. Minutes later, they arrive at Eisler Memorial Hospital before disappearing into the night. Back at the hotel, Ava is still standing by the door, heart pounding. Then there's a knock. With shaking hands, she reaches for the door and slowly starts to open it. Tenma is in a race against time. He has to reach Ava before Roberto does, before she becomes the next name on his kill list. He manages to track down her hotel and even gets the room number, 402. But when he bursts into the room, she is gone. Meanwhile, Verdeman finishes discussing Tenma's dramatic prison break with Dr. Reichven. As he returns to his office, he finds someone already waiting for him. Inspector Lunge. Lunge tells Verdeman that he isn't particularly interested in Tenma's escape. Instead, he is digging into Franz Bonaparta. Producing a copy of the nameless monster, he explains that his research has led him to a surprising name, Verdeman's father. Apparently, Verdeman Sr. aired one of Bonaparta's eerie stories on his radio station, and even paid the man several visits in Czechoslovakia. To make things more interesting, these meetings took place at the Red Rose Mansion itself. Nonetheless, Lunge isn't concerned with whether Verdeman's father was a spy, a traitor, or a man with questionable literary taste. He just wants information on Bonaparta.
The radio station your father owned had a program called The World's Fables.
Before Verdeman can fully process this, his phone rings. His wife is calling from the maternity center. Without hesitation, he leaves the office and jumps into his car, only to find himself staring down the barrel of a gun. Sitting in the back seat, looking more desperate than ever, Tenma orders Verdeman to drive. As they speed through the streets, Tenma grills him about Ava, specifically about the plan that he and Alfred Ball supposedly devised to kill her. Verdeman, still reeling from the surprise hostage situation, has no idea what Tenma is talking about. He swears he knows nothing about an assassination plot. Frustrated, Tenma keeps pressing, but Verdeman finally pulls over and takes a deep breath. If they're going to have this conversation, it needs to happen now. Verdeman confesses that ever since discovering his father was actually a spy, he's been unable to trust anybody. He spent years trying to piece together the truth. One day, he came across his father's old notebook from the 1960s. They mention his visits to the infamous Red Rose Mansion, and more importantly, Franz Bonaparta. Now, things start to click for Tenma. Roberto, under the guise of Alfred Ball, is only acting a role in order to gain access and destroy the tell-all notebook, as it relates to Bonaparta as well as Johan's origin. Determined to find some answers, they drive to Verdemon's house. When they arrive, their worst fears are confirmed. The place has been completely ransacked, but fortunately, the notebook is still safe.
He didn't think to look through my old records. Over the rainbow.
Verdemon also spots an envelope. It's a letter addressed to Kenzo Tenma. Supposedly, it's written by Eva. It begs him to come find her at the Red Rose Mansion to help her. Whether this is a trap or a real cry for help, one thing is clear. Tenma is going to the Red Rose Mansion. In episode 56, we're back to Prague, where Nina is busy untangling the twisted memories of her past. She remembers the day Johan was taken from the Three Frogs house and starts retracing old paths, wandering through Prague's winding streets like a detective with a severe case of déjà vu. Eventually, she and Dieter stumble upon the Red Rose Mansion. The moment they step inside, a strange familiarity washes over Nina. They find the secret door that Inspector Lunge had uncovered earlier, and they step through. Nina is suddenly hit with a memory so intense it knocks her out cold. Dozens of lifeless bodies littering the floor. When she becomes conscious, she's no longer in the mansion. She and Dieter are in the home of an eccentric puppeteer named Jaromir Lipski. He found Nina passed out of the Red Rose Mansion and, being a generally decent guy, brought her back to his place. Jaromir is an entire bookshelf full of children's books, all written by Franz Bonaparta under different pen names.
Every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, the children would gather together for a book reading.
Jaromir explains that he was once a student at the Red Rose Mansion, where Bonaparta conducted book readings, but he wasn't considered one of the superior children, so he was actually kicked out of the book club. Meanwhile, back at the Red Rose Mansion, Johan, dressed up like his twin sister again, steps into the hidden room. He now remembers everything that happened in this house, everything that happened from his childhood. He throws off the disguise and sets the mansion on fire. Another evidence of his past has now been destroyed. In the next episode, Nina's memories are coming back, and they're not the kind that anybody would want to remember. She recalls how she and Johan were adopted by the Lieberts, moving from East to West Germany. Should have been a fresh start. Instead, one night, Johan calmly announced that the monster had come to take them away, and then proceeded to slaughter the Lieberts. Afterward, he handed Nina a gun, and in a moment, as bizarre as it was terrifying, asked her to shoot him right in the forehead. Since they were twins, Johan actually believed that he would live on through his sister. Meanwhile, Tenma finally reaches the Red Rose Mansion, only to find that Johan has already turned it into a pile of ash. As the police comb through the wreckage, they make a gruesome discovery. A grave filled with bones belonging to 46 people who had mysteriously vanished from the mansion years ago, before Tenma can even process the horror. Two men approach him and tell him that General Wolf wants to see him. At the hospital, General Wolf, now on his deathbed, spills what little he knows about the experiment that was happening at the Red Rose Mansion. According to him, Johan was most likely born there. Not biologically, but in the way you create something terrifying in a lab. Wolf then recounts the day he first found the twins at the Czechoslovakian border, carrying nothing but a small bag and a copy of the Nameless Monster. Seeing the book, he decides to name the boy Johan, a decision he now realizes probably set off something inside of him.
Because Johan was such a wonderful name.
Wolf had named this kid after the monster in a sketchbook. Now, remember that organization, which has no name? Well, Wolf issues a final warning before his time runs out. He warns that Eva is currently with the last two remaining leaders of that organization, other than himself and deceased Professor Gidelitz, and that they're trying to use Eva as a pawn for a dangerous cause that must be stopped. The general dies shortly after. Meanwhile, Nina, Dieter, and Jaromir visit the Red Rose Mansion's ruins, but instead of dwelling on the darkness, they decide to create happy memories. And what better way to do this than by wandering around Prague, eating good food, and generally having a wholesome time. It's the closest thing to a vacation that they've ever had. Nina and Dieter eventually part ways, leaving the puppeteer to his creative endeavors. However, not long after this, Inspector Lunge arrives at Jaromir's apartment. In true Lunge fashion, he sizes up the puppeteer and drops a doozy. He believes Jaromir Lipski is Franz Bonaparta's son. Of course, nothing in this story can ever be simple. This episode marks the start of a mini-arc. It introduces Peter Chipik, who happens to be the third leader of the organization. He wants to send Eva Heinemann on a secret mission, pointing out Johan with a simple gesture. Apparently, these leaders, plus the baby, have no idea what Johan looks like in the present. And yet, they want to make them their supreme leader and the modern Hitler. A bodyguard, Martin Riest, has been assigned to escort Eva, but she suspects that she's going to die when she's accomplished her purpose. In the next episode, Eva does end up pointing out Johan, Meanwhile, Johan gets greeted by this blonde guy called Christoph Sievernich. Both he and Johan last saw each other as kids at the Red Rose Mansion, and they'd promised to reunite 10 years in the future. Christoph stands as the fourth leader of the organization, having replaced his father. As this happens, Martin Riest, yeah, that bodyguard, is given a gun to shoot Ava. But he's been around her for a bit, even falling for her, and can't get himself to pull the trigger. Christoph spots Martin stalking him around the hotel and simply invites him in, like a host welcoming an old friend. And this is when things get really creepy. Christoph starts talking about him, about Martin, about things that no one should know. He speaks about the end of the world like it's a dinner topic.
Your mother and your girlfriend both wanted to die. You were helping people who wanted to die to find some relief.
Then casually drops a verbal dossier. His ex-girlfriend's suicide, his mother's frozen corpse, his history of abandoning women he cared about. He connects the dots, painting Martin as a man cursed to watch every woman in his life die, and now Ava will be no different. Next episode, 3 of Chapek's men arrive to make sure that Ava is dead. Martin, however, takes out every last one of them. His gun clicks empty, out of bullets and out of luck. This is when the final shots ring out. Pain explodes through him, he hits the pavement and starts bleeding out. Tenma tries to save him, but it's too late. Before the darkness takes him, however, Martin uses his last breath to warn about Chapek, who is trying to control the devil, meaning Johan. But according to Martin, the devil is too powerful. He also begs Tenma to protect Ava because, well, of course. After all this, Tenma finds Ava at the train station waiting. He tells her about Martin, and she breaks down crying. From the station, Tenma then heads to Yaretset Hotel, where Christoph Sievernich, the supposed disciple and childhood friend of Johan, waits. While this happens, Ava heads straight for the black market and buys herself a gun. In the next episode, Nina and Dieter reunite with Dr. Reichven, and Carl and Letty join the mix. With Rudy Gillan's help, Nina undergoes hypnosis, diving even deeper into her fragmented past. The memories come in waves. She remembers her mother, a fierce anti-government activist, and her father, a soldier that she never knew, who was killed before she could even form a picture of him in her mind. She remembers how they hid in the Three Frogs house and how, one day, Johan was taken away to the Red Rose Mansion. And then something shifts. A dark realization slams into her and her entire demeanor changes. She stands up abruptly, eyes wild, hands tightening around Dr. Rudy's throat. Rudy struggles, but he doesn't panic. He recognizes what's happening. This isn't Nina attacking him. She's remembering everything. 2 days later, the weight of her memory is fully settled. Nina finds out that Tenma is in Frankfurt. Without a word, she writes a letter and leaves. In the letter, she states it clearly. She understands now. She knows who she is. She knows where Johan came from, and most importantly, she knows where he's going to go next. She then ends it all with a chilling promise. She can stop this, and she can save Tenma. In episode 62, Tenma arrives at the Yaretsit Hotel in Frankfurt, keeping his eyes locked on Peter Chapek and the baby as they walked in, flanked by their bodyguards. He's ready to tail them, already signaling for a taxi, but just as he slides into the cab, sirens wail and police cars swarm the area. Tenma bolts, weaving through the streets in a desperate escape, only to be immediately hit by a van. When he wakes up, he finds himself in a stranger's house. A man named Milan, a dentist with a not-so-typical clientele, has patched him up. Milan shares his home with people from all over, each of them carrying the same burden. They've all lost somebody. And as Tenma soon learns, they all lost them because of Chapek. Curious, Tenma starts poking around Milan's room and finds photos and a report on Chapek. Milan catches him snooping but doesn't seem to mind. Instead, he confesses he's going to kill Chapek. And frankly, it sounds personal. Chapek is like his own version of Johan in a way. Milan reveals that Chapek is once his friend.
There's a town over there that's lit up all night.
Is that really true, Peter? And who'd you hear that from?
Back in 1989, he helped Chapek escape from Czechoslovakia into Germany, a decision that he's regretted ever since. After coming to Germany, Chapek reinvented himself as a teacher, reading books with the kids sort of like how Bonaparta used to do in the Red Rose Mansion. But something was off. His students started behaving strangely, killing each other and some even taking their own lives. Milan's own son was one of those kids, and not long after, he was dead. After the tragedy, Chapek vanished, only to resurface as the leader of the far-right neo-Nazi underground movement, stirring up hatred and orchestrating brutal attacks, including the infamous fire in the Turkish district in 1996. Every single person in Milan's home had suffered because of him. The next day, at the convention center, Milan takes his shot at Chapek, but he misses. The police react instantly, and within moments, Milan is dead.
Everyone says it's delicious. They really love it. Well, I certainly hope Milan gets home soon.
Meanwhile, Nina arrives in Frankfurt. Watching the news, she sees coverage of the failed assassination attempt. And there, among the chaos, she spots Chapek. She recognizes him immediately. He was there. He was the one who took Johan away from the Three Frogs. In this episode, the authorities are slowly trying to put the pieces together. There are 3 different murderers in custody, each believing they were acting under the influence of something greater than themselves. 3 unrelated crimes all trace back to one young man, Johan Liebert. Things get heated in the following episode. The baby is not happy, not one bit. He sits across from Peter Chapek, fuming over the latest mess. 3 murders, all conveniently timed to cover up Christoph Sievernich's personal scandals. He tells Peter that this is getting out of hand, that Johan is also a loose cannon. Maybe trying to make him their supreme leader isn't the smartest decision after all. Chapek, as usual, is unfazed. He insists that everything is going according to plan, that these deaths were simply Johan's will. He says it like it's the weather report, as if mass murder is just part of the daily forecast. The baby flashes back to his last conversation with Christoph, when he had confronted him about the whole disaster. He had questioned whether Christoph even deserved his position, whether he had any real power or if he was just a pretty boy playing at being important because of the position of his late father. Christoph, cool as ever, had assured the baby that he had no intention of making an enemy, but the baby had walked away with a bad feeling. A feeling that, unfortunately, would turn out to be very right.
And I know the details about every bit of it.
Well, you know what they say happens to people who know too much. Secrets have to be kept.
Later that night, the baby unwinds with Carmen, a stripper he's been seeing lately. They go up to his hotel room where he's presumably expecting a good time, but he does not get one. One of his bodyguards, unable to reach him by phone, heads to the hotel to check on him. He enters the room and finds the baby dead. Carmen has done the job and disappears without a trace. When Chapek gets the news, paranoia sinks its claws into him. The baby had been worried about Johan. Now the baby is dead. The pattern is not lost on him, so he decides to run, heading to a safe house, a place so secret that not even his closest associates know about it. On the way, memories start flooding in. He remembers the first time he met Franz Bonaparta, the first time he laid eyes on the twins Johan and Anna, the ultimate creations of Bonaparta's twisted program. The more he remembers, the more his nerves begin to fray. By the time they reach the safe house, Chapek is completely unraveling. A sudden panic grips him, and in a moment of sheer paranoia, he shoots his own driver, who's merely reaching for a cigarette. When he reaches the house, something feels wrong. It's empty. No bodyguards. No security. No sign of life. His so-called sanctuary is a ghost house. He then sinks into a chair in the living room, chest rising and falling in ragged breath. And then, Johan steps out of the shadows.
Many people drank that red wine.
During their chat, Chapek tries to use Nina as leverage to keep Johan in check. Calm, smiling, Johan asks one simple question. Is Franz Bonaparta still alive? Johan is now certain that the monster was never inside of him. It was Franz Bonaparta all along. Next episode, Chapek's men barge into Nina's hotel room, expecting to catch her off guard. Instead, they find her calmly waiting, gun in hand, looking about as unimpressed as someone who's just received bad room service. The men, clearly taken aback, inform her that they were sent to bring her to Chapek. Nina, after a moment of consideration, lowers her weapons and tells them that she's going to go willingly. She wants to see Chapek anyway. At the Yahrzeit Hotel, Tenma spots Christoph Sievernich stepping into his sleek white Mercedes-Benz. Sensing something important, he decides to tail him. The car leads him to an apartment. Inside, Christoph is expecting Johan, but instead he gets Ava, standing there with a gun, looking ready to settle some scores. Nina, now face to face with Chapek, immediately recognizes him from her fragmented memories. The flashbacks swirl in her mind as she raises her gun, intent on pulling the trigger, but something makes her pause. Chapek, rather than pleading for his life, smirks and says that according to the plan, though even he isn't sure whose plan, she is supposed to kill him. This realization makes Nina hesitate even more. If Johan has orchestrated this moment, then she's just another piece on his chessboard. Lowering her weapon, she demands to know where Johan has gone. Back at the apartment, Ava presses Christoph for Johan's location. Christoph claims he doesn't know. Ava, in return, shoots him in the air. Now bleeding and a lot less smug, Christoph starts talking. He reveals that he and Johan go way back, all the way to Kinderheim 511. They were the only 2 survivors of that infamous psychological nightmare.
Do you think the killing has stopped? I wonder if everyone is dead. I bet they are.
Seizing the moment, Christoph lunges at Ava, managing to wrestle the gun from her. Now the tables have turned, and he points the weapon at her. But just as he's about to pull the trigger, Tenma arrives, gun drawn, and tells Christoph to drop it. A gunshot echoes through the apartment. Somewhere on the road, Nina and Chapek drive toward their next destination, to meet Johan. The following episode, Peter Chapek reveals to Nina the truth about her and Johan's origins. They weren't just any siblings. They were products of a twisted eugenics experiment in Czechoslovakia, designed to create the most elite children imaginable. The researchers carefully paired men and women with exceptional traits: intelligence, bone structure, athletic ability, and of course the ever-important favorable race criteria. Their mother, Vera Cherna, was a brilliant genetics student. Their father, on the other hand, was a soldier. They actually fell in love, unlike most of the other test subjects. But when their father finally realized what they were a part of, he panicked and told Vera to run. The plan didn't go very well. They were caught almost immediately. He was presumably killed, while Vera was locked away. One frequent visitor to her confinement was Franz Bonaparta, the mastermind behind this little horror show. When it was time for Vera to give birth, she made a daring escape through the vents, only to collapse just a few meters outside. The universe had a dark sense of humor. She was recaptured, gave birth in captivity, and soon found Bonaparta and Chipik standing over her babies, deciding their fates like they were picking out produce at a market. Now it's been said that Vera dressed her twins in the same girly outfit so nobody would know she had 2 children. But in the end, the twins were taken from her and her nightmare continued.
I won't forgive you, ever. Come what may, I will never forgive you.
In the car, Nina processes this information. Johan already knows. And now they both know something else. Bonaparta is still alive. Their journey takes them to an abandoned building, the perfect setting for what is clearly going to be a dramatic confrontation. Meanwhile, Tenma drives a bleeding Christoph to a hospital. Ava, however, has other priorities, like getting information. She grills Christoph about Johan's location. But just as she steps out to make a phone call, Christoph drops a bombshell on Tenma. Johan wants to see him. He tells Tenma exactly where to go. Without hesitation, Tenma takes off, leaving Ava behind. Christoph, now enjoying the moment, informs Ava that Tenma insisted on going alone. He didn't want to drag her any deeper into this madness.
I can't get you involved any further. I've already ruined your life. I'm very sorry.
Back at the abandoned building, Nina steps inside and sees Johan waiting for her. The memories hit her like a freight train. She remembers how they fled Prague, right after the fire at the Three Frogs. Probably Johan's handiwork. She remembers the kind farmers who sheltered them afterward, and she remembers how, despite their kindness, Johan murdered them without hesitation. Johan greets her with his usual eerie calm, but Nina is done with the pleasantries. She points her gun at him, her hands ready. She reminds him that every single person who ever showed them kindness met a violent end because of him. Then her voice sharpens. She tells him she's going to do exactly what she did in 1986. Pull the trigger and end this, with no hope of him getting saved again. Next episode, Johan decides it's time for Nina to hear the full story about the infamous experiment at the Red Rose Mansion. He explains how he was taken from the Three Frogs and placed in a dark room under the watchful eye of Franz Bonaparta, like some kind of twisted science project. Then comes the memory that has haunted him, or maybe just fascinated him. He recalls wandering the mansion on the night of the massacre. 46 people, all toasting their success in creating the so-called perfect human, unknowingly drank poisoned wine and dropped dead. The only survivor was Bonaparta himself. Amidst the chaos, Johan ran straight back to the Three Frogs, where Nina welcomed him home. Tenma arrives at the abandoned house, only to find Nina with a gun pointed at her own head. Alarmed, he quickly talks her down. Nina tells Tenma that everything she thought she knew was wrong. It wasn't Johan who was subjected to the experiment, it was her. Now, to understand the twist, you kinda have to go back to the past. To say Johan and his twin sister had a pretty messed up childhood is obviously an understatement. For instance, they had to wear the same dress. They were not allowed to have names to distinguish them individually. They were completely interchangeable with no distinct personality. So when Johan, dressed as a young Anna, listened to his sister's account of what took place at the Red Rose Mansion, he took her memories and made them his own, shaping his identity around a past that was never truly his. You see, Nina was always meant to be the monster, not Johan. I suppose this could mean that this guy is some kind of great brother.
I know that I will destroy myself.
No, you won't.
But don't you see that I have to do it?
Nina, no!
Tenma comforts Nina, grounding her in reality. Just then, Peter Chipik arrives. Ever the opportunist, speculating that Johan has actually gone off to find Franz Bonaparta and kill him. He muses aloud whether they would finally put an end to this madness, as if he's narrating his own philosophical documentary. Chipik then leaves, finally questioning what they had really been trying to create all those years ago. Unfortunately for him, karma arrives in the form of a bullet. One of his own bodyguards, worried that the boss has gone insane, shoots him dead right there on the street. In the next episode, we're reminded that Inspector Lunge is still hanging around. He arrives in the quiet town of Ruenheim, following a lead from a postcard given to him by Jaromir Lipsky. This is Bonaparta's beloved hometown, where he's remained peacefully secluded from his horrible past. Lunge checks into the nearly empty Hotel Verstek, where the only other guests are an elderly couple. Our smiley-faced Grimmer, using a new alias, also arrives in Ruenheim and checks into the same hotel. When he hears about a missing dog, he volunteers to search for it, using the excuse to investigate the village. While searching, he bumps into Lunge, who is, of course, also looking for the dog. Grimmer eventually finds the dog in the forest, only to notice that Lunge is somehow shown up there too. Lunge brings up the Prague incident involving Grimmer, making it clear he's been keeping tabs on him. Grimmer, quickly catching on that Lunge is a detective, asks the big question: can they stop the massacre that's about to unfold in Ruenheim? Elsewhere in town, Henning and Franka Heineck a married couple, win the lottery. But instead of celebrating, Henning becomes convinced that everyone is out there to rob him. He rushes off to buy weapons just in case. After this, Grimmer and Lunge, together with a local young boy called Wim, find an abandoned house on the hill. Lunge spots some familiar drawings, sketches of the twins, just like the ones drawn by Franz Bonaparta back in Prague.
Hundreds. No matter how many times he drew them, he was never satisfied.
And somewhere outside of town, Mr. Conrad, a quiet Ruenheim resident, is peacefully picking cowberries when an unknown man steps out of the shadows. The man points a gun at him. Looks like things in Ruenheim are just getting started. In the following episode, we are at Hotel Verstek. The elderly couple enjoys their breakfast, complimenting the delicious cowberry jam. The hotel owner casually mentions that Mr. Conrad, a local forager, is the one who makes it. Unbeknownst to them, somewhere in the forest, Mr. Conrad lies dead. Meanwhile, Lunge and Grimmer debate whether they still have a chance to stop the massacre in Ruenheim. Lunge, ever the realist, points out that it might have already begun. Meanwhile, Henning and Franka Heineck, growing increasingly paranoid after their lottery win, head into the woods looking for Mr. Conrad, only to find his lifeless body. Franka immediately suspects Henning, because he did just buy a gun. Henning protests his innocence, insisting that he hasn't even fired it yet. Given the rising tension in the town, it's not the best time for marital mistrust. We see the elderly couple handing out guns to the townspeople like handing out candy, almost like somebody's paying them to fuel the chaos in Ruenheim. Not long after, Lunge, strolling through town, hears a gunshot. Neighbors are starting to turn on each other. This is about to be the town-wide version of Kinderheim 511, all orchestrated by Johan's men. This is Johan's revenge against the man who destroyed his own family. Ruenheim's peaceful days are over. Back in Prague, Tenma visits Nina at the hospital. She warns him that they have to move fast. Johan is planning something horrific in Ruenheim, a massacre that would mirror the horrors of the Red Rose Mansion in Kinderheim 511. She also tells him that Johan plans to commit the perfect suicide. Before Tenma leaves, Nina makes one request, that Tenma returns alive. Determined to get ahead of Johan's plan, Tenma tracks down Jaromir Lipski, who tells him that Junge had already figured out the same thing a couple of weeks ago. Jaromir confirms that Franz Bonaparta's real name wasn't Bonaparta, but Klaus Pape, and that the last he heard, Pape was living in a town in southern Germany surrounded by mountains.
A small town surrounded by many mountains. There it is.
Back in Ruenheim, with the Heinecks having stashed Mr. Conrad's body in the woods, the townspeople begin to grow anxious. At Hotel Verstek, Lunge listens in on a conversation between the local officer and the hotel owner. The officer is frustrated. The rising crime and worsening weather mean that they're on their own. Lunge glances at the elderly couple and notices something unsettling. The old man's shoes are covered in mud, as if he's been walking through the rain, a man of habit. Lunge decides to make a phone call, only to find that all the lines are dead. Things are falling into place, just not in the way that anybody would hope. Outside, a police officer spots a broken-down car and approaches to help. Before the officer can react, an armed man steps out and shoots him. The gunshot echoes through the streets, reaching Grimmer, who stiffens up. He doesn't need to see to know. Johan's plan is already in motion. The next episode takes us to the darkened forests of Ruenheim, where police officers Laufer and Merkel search for answers and instead find bodies. Laufer stumbles upon Mr. Conrad's corpse, but when he turns back to tell Merkel, he discovers his partner has also been shot. Realizing the town is unraveling into chaos, Laufer bolts for the police car and frantically radios for reinforcements. Before anybody can respond, another shot rings out. Laufer falls to the ground. As this happens, Grimmer confronts the hotel owner, who cryptically mutters about him, a boy who looked like his grandson and who seemed to know everything about them. Grimmer and Lunge exchange glances. They already suspected, but now it's confirmed. The hotel owner isn't just anybody. He's Franz Bonaparta. And let's just say he's not what anybody would expect.
How many townspeople did you give out guns to? You don't want to make me any angrier.
Back in Prague, Nina receives a letter from Johan. He's waiting for her in Ruenheim. Dr. Reichvin and Dr. Rudy piece things together. Ruenheim must be where Tenma went. Without hesitation, Nina decides to follow, with Rudy by her side. At the hotel, Lunge and Grimmer press Bonaparta for answers. The former evil mastermind behind the experiments fled to Ruenheim, hoping to hide from Johan, knowing that death would eventually come for him. But Grimmer isn't about to let him take the easy way out, telling him that he's going to be held accountable for everything that he's done. In this episode, after tying up the elderly couple handing out guns, Grimmer and another resident, Henning Heineck, prepare to defend Hotel Verstek, knowing full well that the odds aren't in their favor. Tenma is doing what he does best, saving lives. He helps terrified townspeople and children escape into the woods, hoping to get them out before the entire town turns into a graveyard. Elsewhere, Lunge prowls through the desolate streets, his senses sharp, his rifle steady. He stumbles upon a young woman sobbing in the shadows. Through her tears, she gasps out one name, Roberto. The ruthless assassin is holed up at Hotel Birkbach, giving the orders that are turning Ruenheim into a slaughterhouse. Soon after, Lunge and Tenma cross paths on the empty streets, two men caught in a storm orchestrated by Johan. Lunge hands the girl off to Tenma, instructing him to take her to Hotel Versteck, where he will find Bonaparta. Then, for the first time in a long, long time, Lunge hesitates. He admits that he has to get back to work, that he has to find Roberto, and then, just before turning away, he does something unexpected. He apologizes to Tenma, and with that, he vanishes into the chaos. Back at Hotel Versteck, the fight begins. A sniper's bullet strikes Henning Heineck through a window. Grimmer dodges the gunfire and bolts to the second floor, where Franka Heineck, Bonaparta, Wim, and the elderly couple are hiding.
Honey, can you hear me? Guess what?
When he arrives, the sight is grim. Franka has been shot. The elderly couple are already dead, and Bonaparta is huddled in a corner with Wim, looking more like a scared old man than the monster Grimmer knows him to be. With no other choice, they retreat to the basement. There, Bonaparta makes a desperate plea, expressing remorse and insisting that if he goes out there, all of this will end. Grimmer refuses and heads out instead. He calls out to the unseen shooters, demanding they show themselves. Silence. Then, the young woman he and Lunge tried to save appears, relief washing over her face at the sight of Grimmer. She takes a step forward. A gunshot. Blood splatters. She collapses. Grimmer doesn't even have time to react before another bullet tears into his shoulder, and this does it. The rage inside him boils over. The magnificent Steiner awakens. By the time Tenma reaches Hotel Versteck, the streets are a battlefield. Rushing inside the building, he races upstairs and finds Grimmer slumped in a chair, blood painting his clothes. The fight is over, but Grimmer is barely holding on. In his last moments, he tells Tenma he's taken down 4 shooters. Then, with shaking hands, he presses a letter into Tenma's palm. Lunge found it at the Red Rose Mansion. Tenma also learns that Johan is at Hotel Birkbach. Before Tenma can leave, Bonaparta and the young boy enter the room. Grimmer, his voice faint but proud, introduces Bonaparta to Tenma. Then something breaks inside of him. Tears well up in his eyes. He sobs, not from pain but from something deeper. He was never emotionless in the first place. His feelings were buried all along, hidden beneath years of trauma and conditioning.
What have I
done? A weak smile touches his lips, a genuine smile, and then Grimmer, the man who fought so hard to remember what it meant to feel, finally rests. In episode 72, Lunge moves carefully through the empty halls of Hotel Birkbach, rifle ready. He's hunting Roberto, but it turns out Roberto is also hunting him. A gunshot cracks through the silence and pain sears through Lunge's back. He hits the floor, his mind still trying to process what just happened. Roberto stands over him, aiming for the kill. Then out of nowhere, another gunshot echoes through the hotel. Over at Hotel Versteck, the mood is heavy. Grimmer is gone, and the people who fought alongside him struggle with the loss. But Tenma doesn't have time to grieve. There's still work to do. He heads for the door, but Bonaparta follows, guilt written all over his face. As they walk, Tenma brings up the letter he got from Grimmer before he died. It was written by Bonaparta himself, addressed by Vera, the twins' mother. With a sigh, Bonaparta finally spills the truth. Many years ago, the communist government gave him free rein to conduct psychological experiments. His goal was to recreate a child's personality from scratch, and through manipulation and brainwashing, this child would grow up to become a leader of men. This theory also backs up what Hartmann said about Johan being a natural-born leader of men way before Kinderheim 511. Bonaparta also confesses that he soon fell in love with Vera. At some point, he started to regret his actions against her, and one of her nameless twins. And because of this, he made sure no one else knew about her, the twins, or the terrible experiment that he helped create, also that she could live in peace. This led him to poison all the guests who would come to witness the presentation of the special child. That massacre at the Red Rose Mansion was him trying to erase any evidence of the eugenics experiment.
I'm the one who created the monster.
And I brought that monster back to life. I'm the one who saved him.
Back at Hotel Birkbach, Roberto isn't doing much better than Lunge. He's lying on a bed, bleeding everywhere but still running his mouth. Despite his injury, Lunge keeps his focus sharp. Lunge, never one to pass up an opportunity for mind games, tries to break him. He digs into Lunge's past. His failed marriage, his absent parenting, his career obsession. But if Roberto thinks that Lunge is going to have some sort of emotional breakdown, he clearly doesn't know who he's dealing with. Instead, Lunge makes Roberto talk about himself, and for once, Roberto does. He reveals that he was just another orphan from Kinderheim 511, molded into a killer like so many others. Then one day, Johan found him. Instead of giving him some grand purpose or horrifying truth, he gave him a memory. Just one. The warm cocoa they got at the orphanage every week. Roberto makes one last move, lunging at Lunge and wrapping his hands around his throat. As he strangles him, he grins and whispers Johan's ultimate plan. In the end, only Tenma will be left standing, but Lunge isn't going down that easily. With sheer determination, he breaks free, sending Roberto crashing back onto the floor. He glares down at him and demands to know, where is Johan? In episode 73, Tenma and Bonaparta arrive at Hotel Bergbach. Before they can even catch their breath, they learn that Nina is in town and looking for Tenma. At the mention of her, Bonaparta freezes. When Tenma gently says that her name is now Nina Fortner, Bonaparta starts crying. The weight of everything he did, everything he set in motion seems to crash down on him all at once. Then the room turns cold. Johan arrives, calm, smiling. He greets Tenma as if this is just another casual meeting, as if the town around them isn't a graveyard. Bonaparta, hands shaking, lifts a gun and aims it at the boy. This is the monster that he helped create. But before he can pull the trigger, another shot rings out. Bonaparta staggers, and he collapses. Behind him, Roberto smirks. His job is now done, but death is catching up with him too, wounded and fading fast. Roberto collapses shortly after his final kill. Johan, unfazed by the chaos, lifts a finger to his forehead. It's his signature move. He looks Tenma straight in the eyes, inviting him, no, begging him to end it. Then, another interruption. Nina and Dr. Rudy burst into the room. Nina, her voice filled with emotion, pleads with Tenma. She tells him not to shoot. Then she turns to Johan, looking straight in the eyes of the brother she has feared and loved. She tells him something he probably never expected. She forgives him. Johan doesn't flinch. Instead, he pulls out his own gun and presses it to Wim's head. He doesn't need to say much. The message is clear. If Tenma won't kill him, then a child will die in his place.
Only one thing's equal for all, and that is death.
But fate has one last trick up his sleeve. The little boy's father doesn't hesitate. He lifts his gun and fires, and the bullet tears into Johan's head. It's over. As the massacre comes to an end, authorities finally flood into the ruined town, trying to piece together what happened. Dr. Rudy and Inspector Lunge provide their accounts. The boy's father, dazed and muttering about the monster that he shot, is taken away for questioning. Then, just as things seem to settle, an officer spots Tenma. His face is recognized instantly. Japan's most wanted fugitive. The moment they try to arrest him, though, a paramedic rushes over, breathless and desperate. They need a doctor. Because against all odds, Johan is still alive. Lunge, watching everything unfold, gives the faintest hint of a smirk. He notes, almost amused, that Tenma might be the only neurosurgeon qualified to save Johan. And so, just as he did in 1986, Tenma prepares for surgery to save the monster once more. The final episode finally arrives, and we get to revisit some old characters. Sometime after the massacre in Ruenheim, life moves on, at least for those lucky enough to survive. Karul sits with his father Shual, delivering news that seems almost surreal. Dr. Tenma has been cleared of all charges. No more fugitive status, no more being hunted. Instead, he's doing what he does best, saving lives with Doctors Without Borders. Elsewhere, Eva Heinemann meets with Dr. Reichven. But this isn't the same bitter, self-destructive woman who once spiraled between rage and regret. She's found a new path. As an interior designer of all things. With a wry smile, she hands him a scrapbook. It's filled with newspaper clippings about Tenma's journey, his arrest, the revelation of Johan's crimes, the court case that set him free, and finally, his return to medicine. As Reichven flips through the pages, he notices something curious. The articles get smaller and smaller, as if the world is slowly letting Tenma fade into the background, where he prefers to be. At Grimmer's grave, Detective Suk, Verdeman, and Inspector Lunge stand in solemn silence. Lunge, the once machine-like detective, now speaks with something almost resembling warmth. He tells them he's teaching at the police academy and, more importantly, trying to be part of his grandchild's life. His small way of making amends for the years spent chasing shadows. Before leaving, he sets a cold beer on the grave. If Grimmer were here, he'd probably chuckle, take a sip, and launch into one of his signature ramblings about human connection and the magnificent Steiner. I think we're all gonna miss that guy.
But in all your investigating, the one mystery you were never able to unravel was that of your real name.
Wolfgang Grimmer.
Meanwhile, Otto Heckel, always with a nose for information, hands Dieter a lead for Tenma. It's about somebody he's been searching for, the twins' mother. Following the trail, Tenma finds her in southern France. There, she speaks of the past, her voice carrying the weight of guilt and sorrow. She admits that she once wished for revenge against those who took her love away, using her own children as instruments of that vengeance. But now, she wonders if she doomed them instead. She recalls their last moments together, their fear, their desperate need for her. And finally, she reveals the real names of the twins to Tenma. A truth lost for years, unfortunately. We, as the viewers, don't actually get to hear these names. Back in Hidelberg, Nina is officially a university graduate, and she shares the news with Dieter over the phone. And then, there's Tenma. He visits Johan, who lies motionless in a hospital bed, seeming comatose. Tenma eventually leaves the room, but then a quiet detail sends a chill through the air. Johan's bed is empty. The window is open. Some monsters aren't slain. They simply disappear, waiting for the right moment to remind the world that they were never really gone in the first place. And this is how Monster ends. Open-ended and raw. Clearly, it's an overly convoluted series, but the gist remains the same. It doesn't just challenge morality, makes you question if you ever understood it at all. Truly, really, really good series. Well, until next time. Hope you have a great day, and as usual, thanks for watching. See ya.